Good morning. We're going to get underway. I have an apology for lateness from Councillor Kewen. Would someone like to move that? Tim, seconded by Phil. I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Can I note that Councillor Dion Swiggs is attending by video conference, and is he able to be... Oh, there he is. Hello, Dion. Welcome.
Hello, everybody.
We can't hear you.
I'll be in early departure. I'm very well. I'll be in early departure at 11:30 your time.
Okay. What time is it there?
4:30.
In the morning.
In the morning. Yeah.
He's in Perth.
A little bit early, but
in Perth. He's been invited to speak at an international conference on what is it, communications and post-disaster environments?
yeah. So it's the first Australian Resilience Conference and the Australian Firefighting Institute Conference for Disaster Risk Reduction and all that sort of stuff.
Excellent.
Is there any truth,
Right up.
Leanne, that it may or may not be Dion's birthday today as well?
I think it might be Dion's birthday today, as it was Glenn Livingston's on Tuesday.
Yes.
Happy
Yeah.
birthday.
So it's going to be a good. It's going to be a long birthday.
Happy birthday, Dion.
Thank you.
Right. And so we will include Councillor Swiggs as an early departure in the resolution for the apologies. No declarations of interest have been recorded, and now we come to public participation, and I'd like to invite Rob Ferguson of the Methodist Mission to speak to Council. He's been taking it to the streets, and I had the opportunity to meet with Rob, and I did suggest that it would be an excellent opportunity for him to come and talk to Council about what he has been undertaking and yeah, what that means for the city. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you. Morning. Morning, Dion.
Good morning, Rob.
After the quakes, the Durham Street Methodist Parish, which is just down the road from here, looked for ways to be relevant to the inner city where they had been since 1864. The longest serving church within the city, really. Needs a bit more kudos. I'm just putting that out there. Streets, the project that I am the only person of, was a response to how to try to be relevant with no building, no office, no programs. And in 2016 I started walking the streets in July with a job description that was deliberately so loose you could drive a bus through it. I talked with lots of people, all the people I meet on the streets. I listened to whatever it was they wanted to tell me, and I slowly discovered a hidden side of Christchurch's inner core, missed if you walk too fast through the city. I think I've read and photographed almost every plaque. I've sat on many of the seats watching people. I've drunk coffee in almost all of the cafes at least once, but like you, I've got my favourites as well. And the job evolved into reflection as a wandering theologian, a story collector, a reflector, and an advocate. I've sat on pavements with streeties. I've visited the rarefied atmosphere of the 6th floor of this building. I've shown tourists where the nearest toilets are and why is there no app for that. I've listened to tearful, frightened people, and I've laughed uproariously with others. I've been hugged by streeties and strangers, and always I've walked slowly through the city, looking and reflecting. I've photographed many things, and not just new or old buildings or supermarket trolleys in very weird places, although they're there as well. I've studied the theory of cities, and I've read the cries for help on bridges and walls in the inner city. I love the art and music of this place, but I'm hoping for global warming because the winters on the streets are bitter and the new laneways simply funnel cold air. I'm in awe of what's been done and by what's not yet happened in the inner city. Every day I'm reminded that the city is a place where the stranger lives, and that every single one of us is a stranger to almost everybody else on the streets. We hear lots about mental health issues and the difficulty in getting treatment. Some of those are quake-related, but others are the normal process of human beings becoming urbanised. For the first time in human history, over 50% of the world's population is now urban. The figure will grow faster and faster. That means that we're always living with strangers, and yet humans are social animals. So in the city, we can quickly become loners, isolates, anonymous, and struggle to understand why we can't make friends. It will get more acute in the future. Planning alone does not solve this, but good planning can help. There's growing concern about folk not coming into the inner city. I hear versions of that every day. Much of it, I think, is the time that's passed since the quakes, 8 years now, and people in 8 years have formed habits that keep them in familiar other places. The same cafes, the same routes, other things beyond shopping. It's hard to break that habit. So I've shown people around the inner city, the rabbits, the eels by the Bridge of Remembrance, Etty Rout's plaque, told the strange but true story of how come we have a statue of Captain Cook that has no mayor's name on it. Shown them the weeping willow that came from Napoleon's tomb, wandered down by the bricks and discovered the far reaches of the navigable Avon River, which is really, to be frank, just a creek, not really a river at all. I grew up by the Clutha. I found people often who've lived here all their lives saying, I had no idea this was here. It's the quirky, the fun, and the new knowledge that will finally bring people into the city. Shops won't do it. There's a huge store of things unknown about this place that deserve to be uncovered and explored. So as I came to the end of my time with the Streets project, which I finish in 3 weeks, I pondered how to report to the Methodist parish that employs me after 2 and a bit years of wandering through the streets of this inner city. I chose to make a photo book. Pictures with few words capture the inner city as I've found it way better than reports on A4 paper or even PowerPoints. It's been my privilege to have been a loose cannon on the streets of the city. It's a pleasure to offer to you, the City Council, a copy of my report so that you can put it in your archives or chuck it around wherever you choose. Many of you I know well now, and I'm glad, to be honest, that it's you, not me, sitting in those seats. And I wish you well in the years ahead. Kia ora koutou.
Thank you.
I gave it to you last week, I'll give it back.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, dear.
It's I will pass it round because it's outstanding, and thank you very much. And I know that you're leaving the city, so you know, just really appreciate what you've done, and it's actually a gift that you're leaving with us, and it's very much appreciated. So thank you for coming in. Next item is a deputation by appointment. Cameron Swanson. I misunderstood this. Is this appropriate?
It's not inappropriate, so it's kind of because we're seeking funding or
Okay, well, it gives it people an opportunity.
Yeah.
Cameron Swanson of Lime Technology, speaking to item 14, e-scooter trading permit application. Welcome.
Yes, thank you. Well, good morning. First and foremost, I'd like to thank the council for allowing us the opportunity to propose this dock-free electric scooter share pilot in the city of Christchurch. I'm Cameron Swanson. I'm a representative of Lime. I'm here today to talk to you about Lime, our background, what brought us to New Zealand, Christchurch in particular, our operational plan, safety precautions, our proposed pilot period, as well as the program size. So Lime was founded in January of 2017 with a mission to transform the world's mobility options in a smart, equitable, and safe way. We're the first and largest smart mobility provider with a multimodal fleet of dock-free pedal bikes, electric assist bikes, and electric scooters. We currently operate in over 80 markets in 5 countries. New Zealand has long been at the top of our list. We think that the country's forward-thinking sustainability practices, its embrace of innovation, and its citizens' health and well-being practices are key factors for our desire to launch here. Christchurch, with its flat topography and its rich history of cycling, it's just a natural fit for Lime. We're excited to see the city at the forefront of this rapidly growing sector. So here in Christchurch, if approved by council, we'll run a 24/7 operation, ensuring a positive customer experience and an orderly public right-of-way. Our team will consist of a local operations manager and dozens of full-time operations specialists who work on rebalancing and repairs, both in the field and in our warehouse. In addition to that, our juicer program allows anyone from the public to join our network of chargers that collects and charges scooters at their own home. The pay per scooter will be commensurate with the difficulty of finding said scooter, as well as the current charge level. Safety is our #1 priority, and we will continue to push that agenda here in Christchurch. While we concede that it's impractical to provide a helmet with every single ride, we'll do our best to encourage safe riding practices. This includes occasional helmet giveaways, on-street user demonstrations and foot patrol, in-app safe riding guidelines, and a scooter with front and rear lights, side reflectors, and a dual braking system. As with all of our markets, we will indemnify the city with a $1 million public liability policy. Our proposed 3-month pilot period will allow 700 scooters to be deployed by Lime at any time. The pilot period provides safeguards for the city, as well as allows Lime to determine how best to serve the community through trial. Following the pilot, we will propose to increase our fleet to a dynamic cap of 1,500 scooters. The dynamic cap will allow us to work closely with the city to determine how many scooters to deploy on a rolling basis. Better metrics will allow for more scooters, whereas worse metrics will lower the cap. So I implore you all to review the operational plan that's attached to the agenda today. And with that, I'd like to open for any questions.
We've left plenty of time for questions. That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mike?
Thank you, Cameron. It's great that you've done this deputation because I have a couple of questions. Are you looking to bring in e-bikes?
Not at this time, but potentially in the future.
Because I just noticed in a job you're advertising for the operations manager, you mentioned e-bikes.
Yeah, so we have 3 different product lines. We've seen that scooters are the most popular. We see just 6 or 7 trips per scooter per day versus the bikes, which e-bikes get around 3, standard pedal bikes get around 1. So we're just trying to bring what people are riding most. I don't want to rule out e-bikes for the future, but right now scooters are a priority.
Potentially down the track you'll bring in e-bikes.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you talked about helmets. So is it your understanding that the e-scooters you have to wear a helmet?
It's my understanding that it's not required by law in New Zealand, but it is for bicycles.
Excellent. And just last question. So you're looking to deploy 700 in Christchurch for the pilot period.
Yep.
And you're doing similar schemes in Auckland and Wellington?
Not Wellington.
Not
yeah,
Wellington.
Just Auckland.
What number are you going to deploy there?
Around 1,000 in Auckland.
Sarah?
Thank you. I really like the idea of these. I'm just wondering what advice you will be given to users about where the scooters are legal to be ridden?
So it's my understanding that in New Zealand there's a bit of grey area at the time, and the scooters can be ridden both on sidewalks and on the street. We will encourage, it can change based on the market. In California, for instance, we are required to have our users ride in the street, so we tell them that in the app when they're signing up. There's a few screens that they need to swipe through that says, please always wear a helmet, please always ride in the street, and it kind of explains the scooter as well. We can do something similar here in Christchurch, although we can't necessarily require anything like that. We can encourage them to ride where they feel safest, whether that be in a bike path or along the edge of the street or on a wide sidewalk where there's limited pedestrians.
Are you aware that the NZTA website under the low-powered vehicle section specifically states that e-scooters aren't able to be ridden on the road? It says that they cannot?
I think it depends on the wattage.
No, it's very specific on that particular website, the NZTA one, official one under low-powered vehicles, and it says specifically that they cannot be ridden on the road.
On the road?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll have to go back and review because we haven't found anything like that yet.
Yeah.
I've looked into it and spoken with NZTA.
Yeah, but that's what's specific on their website.
Okay.
And the public liability insurance, $1 million, under what circumstances could that be used, do you think? So I'm aware that the contract users will probably say to users, you're responsible for whether you're riding legally or those kind of things. What type of thing could that be used for?
So as far as our terms and conditions, I have our outdated version attached to the agenda today.
Yeah,
I have a newer one that I can send you. We've updated it. So if you want to send me your email later today, I can pass that along.
It should come to all of us, yeah.
Yeah. As far as insurance, if there are any sort of lawsuit for injury or malpractice in our operations, that's when the insurance would come into play. Same if someone were to sue the city because they were injured on a line scooter on public roads, that's when the insurance would come into play because we would indemnify the city.
And just last thing from me, the geofencing, does that mean the bikes can't be ridden past that geofence?
Correct.
So there's an area of interest in me that's missed out currently, and that's the coastal pathway and all the way out down the Bays area to Sumner. And going to Sumner would be the same distance as going all the way down to the end of South Shore, which is in the area. And I'm wondering if you're able to extend that out to Sumner.
Yeah, we're happy to. Nick actually brought that up to me yesterday, so
yeah.
Happy to do that.
Thank you.
Just picking up on the NZTA issue, I've got Anne, Phil and then Yanni. Just picking up on the NZTA issue, but you'll ensure that whatever advice is given on the app matches up with the legal advice that you get from NZTA.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anne?
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. And one of our strategic priorities is to increase active transport, so this is great, and it would be great to see young people out and about on these. I think they would be really appealing. I think the biggest issue probably is safety. I think that's what's coming through from the discussions we've had already, public safety. In your experience, what has been the experience of accidents and injury? Is there something that you can talk to us about in terms of trends and things?
Yeah, I don't have any specific data or metrics that I can point to. I know that there haven't been any major injuries on scooters so far, perhaps just minor injuries from a scrape or a fall or something like that. Scooters don't go incredibly fast. Our latest version of the scooter, like I mentioned before, it has two different brake mechanisms. So there's a throttle on the handle that allows you to brake. It's an electric brake, and then there's a brake on the back wheel that you can step on to slow down. People tend to they naturally move to the rear brake if needed. Beyond that, like I said, I don't have any overall metrics or trends to point to, but primarily just minor.
Generally what you'd expect from cycle riding and
Yeah.
other forms of active transport.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Phil?
Thank you, Cameron. I understand, my question's really around the safety too, and because I understand that, for example, because the scooters will be docked, that the way, for example, that a rider would understand the safety rules, if you like, would be by way of an app. Is that correct?
Yeah, the scooters actually won't be docked, so they're dock free. So they have a self-locking mechanism that allows them to be parked anywhere. It can be parked in a bike rack or up against a building or in a preferred parking spot. And then they would download the app, walk up to the scooter, scan the QR code on the scooter, it turns on, they ride it wherever they need to go, and then they can relock it in whatever location they need to.
I see. So, and like, I would see just from our report that this is like a pilot for 3 months, but there's also a condition that if there was any breach that wasn't remedied within 10 days, that in fact it would be terminated. So, to make sure it works, if some safety issues that have been raised, we were concerned about, are you giving us an undertaking that they will be that you would work towards resolving those?
Absolutely, yeah. Any like I said, safety is our number one priority. And we'll have people out and about. We have our operations specialists that are out every single day working 24/7. So if we see anybody that looks like they're having difficulty understanding how the scooter works, we can provide instruction. In the app, it provides instruction on how to ride the scooter, along with pictures when they're first signing up. So that can help people understand a little bit more how the scooter works. But if we notice any particular trends, we're always there to correct whatever we need to.
Look, thank you very much. We've come to the end of the 10 minutes, so look, thank you for your time, and yeah, thanks for bringing the idea to our attention too. Thank you. Presentation of petitions.
Sorry, just a process question. Obviously, some of us will have questions for staff that the staff may not be able to answer without. So a number of us had additional questions. So are we able to get those asked as part of the staff report?
Well, I'm in the hands of the council. If people would like to extend the time, I'm happy to accept that.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah,
Sorry, Cameron. I hope you've got a bit more time, but you might have been planning to be zapping out of here in 10 minutes. So, yeah, scooting away. Yanni.
Was there anyone else before me? I think.
No, you were.
No. Okay. Oh, okay. Well, just wondered in terms of charging and usage. Do you charge a bond when people sign up? If so, what sort of quantum is it?
We don't.
Okay, and then also just in terms of the issue of the cost, is it? I see you're working with Uber in other parts of the world. Is that going to be also done in Christchurch?
The Uber partnership is still forming. I don't know what that would look like in other parts of the world yet. It's still underway in the U.S. In terms of cost, it's $1 to unlock plus 30 cents per minute. As of right now, it can only be unlocked through our own app.
Did it? Anyone else? Oh, Mike.
Sorry, just one more question. In other cities where you have juices, do you get turf wars?
Sorry?
Turf wars where people try and take a patch and don't let anyone else get into it, and
a little bit. It's more so between our operations specialists and the juicers. So we generally let the juicers go out a little bit sooner. They'll collect the scooters that are easier to find, and then our operations specialists will go out and collect any scooters that haven't been found that night. I wouldn't necessarily say turf wars, but maybe two people have gone for the same scooter in the past.
okay, thanks.
Actually, I did have a question, which was somebody emailed me about an older person who'd had experience overseas of being on the footpath, and of course, eerily, e-scooters are very quiet. So, sort of feeling a bit, sort of unprotected on a footpath. Is there some way of letting people know that you're coming? I mean,
there is a bell on the
Yep.
scooters. They're able to ring a bell. Yeah.
Right. And you would recommend that if you see an elderly person in front of you?
We would, yeah. There's also a relatively bright front headlight, so I don't know if it's dusk or if it's morning. They would likely see that the headlight is quite bright.
Right, okay, no, that's good to know too. Excellent, well, look, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Much appreciated. So we have no presentation of petitions, so I'd invite Mike Mora and Gary Watson to come forward for the Waipuna Horsewall Hornby Riccarton Community Board report to Council. Thank you. Welcome, Mike.
Morning, Leanne. You had our new name roll off your tongue very well.
That's because it's in front of me.
So we don't have any Part A's, Leanne, but we do have some. We've been naming quite a lot of streets in our area because we've got quite a lot happening, of course, in our ward with the new developments. Significant council projects in our board area. It was great to go to the 20th anniversary of the 24/7 youth workers just recently. Some of us that have been around forever can remember supporting that group to get up and running, and they're operating very successfully in our community. So we're very, very proud of that association that we've got with our 24/7 youth workers who are operating from our schools and in the community. And resource consent has now been lodged, evidently, or received for our new Riccarton Community Centre. So we're really looking forward to progressing the progress of that. That's something that's been quite a long time coming, but we're getting there. Other significant issues in our ward are we had a Dean's Ave Precinct Society come and raise concerns about the old Addington Sale Yards site in Dean's Ave and general issues around that area. So we're very pleased to know that staff are actually working on that to try and get that area cleaned up. As you can see, we've got there's an absentee owner for that land, and we've got people have been dumping rubbish there, sleeping rough, and it's just generally a bit of an eyesore. So we'd really, really like to support the community and encourage our staff to keep working proactively as much as they can to get that area sorted out. Moving on then to...
Isn't there a resource consent application on that site for a development, or is that further down?
It's on the site off to the right. That's on the Mayfair Street side.
But it's the same owner, isn't it? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So essentially, they'll want to sort this as part of that.
Well, there has been consents and things flagged for that area in the past, but they haven't sort of eventuated. So
no, but I mean, we can't predetermine a result of a resource consent application. But
yeah. So moving on then to our helpful random facts. We've got a lot of groups and organisations that we've been very, very pleased to be able to support with our youth development funding, strengthening communities grants and discretionary response funds projects. So we've got an event coming up shortly where some of our youth development funding people are actually coming to report back to our board on how that funding has helped them with their goals and objectives of what that funding was for. So we really, really welcome the opportunity to get that feedback from our young people. And the sale yards we've already spoken about, and there's a lesson to be learned here how things can happen with skate parks, and we are very pleased to say that our Night Stream skate park is being built, and and the grand opening of that is on the 12th of October, which is the last Friday of the school holidays. So we're really looking forward to that. I can say that I won't be skateboarding that day, but I'll be there looking and enjoying the young people and older people actually that take part in that activity. Sorry? Absolutely. I think Yanni might be able to come and give a few demonstrations to you, Councillor Johansson. So that's something that we're looking forward to, and we're very, very pleased to say that Westfield's local hero, one of our youth workers, Mana, has got the La Vida Youth Trust has got a $10,000 grant from Westfield for our local hero. So there was only 3 recipients of that those grants, and he's the only one working locally in Riccarton, so that's really, really good. And the Hallswell Men's Shed, that's a really great asset to the community. I can't wait to get old enough and have enough time to actually go and join the men in the men's sheds, but it's a great asset to the community and to the well-being of the community, of course. And there's a lot of skill in the community with retired people that have got the opportunity and the knowledge to actually create all sorts of good stuff. So I think we really recognise them as a star group in our area. And I'm aware that other people will be talking about Kate Shepherd later on, but anyway, Kate lived in our ward, and in 83 Clyde Road, the property's still there. So just recognise that it was, people just need to take that step, that big step, which Kate did, to actually change the world, really. Change the world as far as women's rights are concerned. So we're very proud to have that association with dear Kate Shepherd. So if there's any questions.
Just a question, not so much of Mike, but maybe of Carleen, but relevant to the report. But it's not in the report. So it's completely opportunistic. Sorry, Carleen. We had the Dean's Ave Precinct Society along about that area, but right in the middle of that area, right beside that area, is our own road reserve for where Blenheim Road was cut off. Right, yeah. And there is now, you remember the woman, it may have been at Itty, Vicky Steele, who came along with a butterfly garden proposal. She's now developed that proposal, and one of the places that we would love to put it is on that road reserve, just as a temporary measure while it's sitting there doing nothing. I don't know the long-term plans for it, but the Residents Association were favourable towards it. The Community Board was fine with it, and she's now developed a concept. How do we actually progress it?
Let me get back to you. It might be through one of the Enliven projects.
Good question. Sorry I couldn't answer it for you.
No, that's very good. Jimmy, Chen.
I'd like to move, but I have one question.
Yes, you can move it and you can ask a question.
Regarding to contents of paragraph 6 and the paragraph 8 on the meeting agenda, is that the same? Why not consider combined together?
I didn't actually write that, but I did pick that up. Is that about the Dean's Ave?
Yeah. But no, not Dean's Ave. I mean the significant community issue and the community coordinator interest. All the same, can combine.
That's actually a really good question, Councillor Chen. I don't have the answer. It is repeated. There's no reason for it to be repeated.
I did notice that, but I was a bit reluctant to raise it.
Okay, no
a mistake on it.
Okay, thank you. I'm happy to move.
Happy to move, and seconded by Vicky. I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next is Waikura Linwood Central Heathcote Community Board report to Council. And Jake Sally's an apology. Darren and Shapaya. Welcome.
Morena, thank you. So I'm happy, of course, to take the report as read with a couple of highlights. Firstly is the granting of a licence of a part of Ragley Park to the Roimata Commons Trust. Sorry if the person operating the PowerPoint, it's going to be a bit sporadic. Of note, of course, is also the opening of the incredible new Woolston Library. So that was a real highlight of the board's program this month.
Oh,
some pictures
nice
there.
photo.
There's Yanni. And also the excitement over the Linwood Woolston pool continues to grow, and staff have done a great job of outreach by coordinating a group of 8 local school children to visit swimming facilities locally and in Selwyn and Timaru and Rangiora, so they can be better informed and so we can draw on their more informed and firm preferences. I want to also note the board approved a payment of over $30,000 to facilitate the rebuilding of steps along Beachville Road in Redcliffs. These were damaged during the earthquake and have since been longed for, and the community have longed for their return ever since, and we're pleased to be able to make it happen. However, it was noted that the DRF isn't the appropriate funding channel for capital projects of this nature. However, we wanted to capitalise on the sharp price offered by the contractor completing nearby works, and of course we had no desire to see the ratepayer pick up the extra cost of completing the work separately or even as part of another project that would result in a large amount of staff time to coordinate. The other thing is, although not part of this report, I'd like to mention a resolution of the board's Monday meeting to write to members of Parliament, Porter Williams and Ruth Dyson, asking them to progress an update to the Council's district plan under Section 71 of the Regen Act, Residential Overlay Clause 5.2.2a, and would encourage Council to take swift action in the same vein. So that's that. Oh, and also, finally, I'd like to take a second to acknowledge the immense hard work of Shapai, our governance manager. This will almost certainly be her last meeting, and Shapai has been a wealth of knowledge to me, and I'm sure the rest of the board, and I wish her well for her future in Wellington, to live as what she described yesterday as a kept woman.
Thank you.
No worries.
So I've been taken by surprise. I didn't realise this was your last meeting. We're losing you to, what, Wellington,
Wellington,
is it?
I know.
Jared moved to Wellington, so since we got married, I thought I should probably live with my husband.
Do you think you have to? Oh, well, look, congratulations, and, and thank you for everything that you've done. I know that you've been a tremendous source of guidance and support for the community board, but actually the relationship with the rest of the council as well, and the community. I get constant feedback about you, and the connections you've made are going to be long held. So you'll always be welcome home.
Thank you.
Don't make Wellington your home. And since you stopped on this picture here, just thought how extraordinary that the Governor General came and opened the Linwood North School Hall. I just thought it was a fantastic story, and she told a story during the opening ceremony, and where she talked about how she'd been born to a couple of rural teachers, and she said that when she was born, she actually was at the back of the classroom in a little bassinet, and that the children of the school helped to raise her, and she had this wonderful connection with the children. I don't think they'll ever forget that opening and what she said. It was stunning. So yeah, really special. David.
Thank you. Look, I'd just like to speak a wee bit about your Beachville Road project and commend the board for the work that they have done to actually get this project underway. My only reservation is that you've had to resort to your own DRF fund to get these works done, and it's obviously a sizable chunk of money out of your DRF. Which I feel is rather disappointing for that community board going forward, that they've had to expend this amount of money to get this quite valuable project underway. So I would like to suggest that to the Chief Executive that some mechanism is looked at to restore the community board's discretionary response fund, because I believe, you know, these sort of projects are something that have benefit for the whole of the city, and it seems unusual that you've had to take the step of using DRF monies to do that.
I'm not sure whether there's a. I mean, as far as I'm aware, if it's a discretionary response fund.
I could add some clarity if you like. Sorry, the board did actually put it forward as a bid in the LTP or annual plan the year before, and it didn't go through, and which is the reason it came to DRF. So it's been through a council process already to seek funding, but wasn't successful.
And we're always asked to prioritise these things, and you know, priorities are sometimes such that it won't make a priority around the table across the city when we're all thinking with our city hats on, rather than our individual community boards. But a community board does have a discretionary response fund for the purpose of adding priority to something that wouldn't make the cut otherwise. So, David, did you want to?
Oh, look, I totally appreciate all of that, but yeah, I'm just disappointed that council process didn't allow funding for this project, and they've had to pay for it out of DRF, and community boards have huge calls on their DRF fund, and so I'm probably just expressing my disappointment that that sort of process had to occur in this instance, but I do applaud the board for what they've done.
Yeah, I mean, thank you. We agreed as a board, and it was originally going to be funded out of the Skirt Works when Skirt did the repairs down that area, but because it wasn't safe to put it back exactly where it was and it needed to be moved slightly, it became out of scope, and so was never done. So,
Phil,
can I just make a quick comment that clearly at the time of the annual plan we'll have a chance to rectify and look at those sort of issues and vote accordingly.
Thank you. All right. Sarah, would you like to move that the report be received and seconded by Yanni? Sorry?
I just also quickly wanted to speak to it.
Oh, for sure.
Just wanted to really sorry, I just wanted to acknowledge the project manager for the Woolston Community Library, Selena Robertson. Just wanted to say that there was huge praise on her for what was a really great project, basically. Really worked with the local community and the volunteer library committee members. The library had been going since 1871. It's one of the oldest libraries in Christchurch, and although it's now a community library, a volunteer library, it's got a huge history of that goes along with it. And I just really wanted to acknowledge the great work that she did, bringing that project together, along with City Care, who actually built it. City Care have built two of our volunteer libraries, Redcliffe's and Woolston. They've done an amazing job, so I think we should be really proud of the work that they've done. And also, and I think possibly for another time, but there are a number of local people who helped, particularly with some of the furnishings. So there was David Woodings, who donated one of his prints out of order number 3, which is a shot of the old building. There was Murray Green, who actually had a photo taken in 1952 of people marching down Ferry Road on Anzac Day, and he's allowed us to use it. It's framed with salvaged timber from the old building. And there was also other things that were given and donated. So it was just a really great facility that's open. There was a huge community response to it being opened, and although people are sad to see the old heritage building not be there anymore, it was really touching to have part of the brick from the old building that was presented, which is what you saw in the photo. So just want to acknowledge the great work that happened on there. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Waimero, I'm not going to pronounce it properly. Waimero, Pendleton, Waimaere, Herwood Community Board. Waimero. This is terrible. I'm sorry. My apologies.
You can still do it better than me, Leanne, so don't worry too much. Good morning, Council.
How is it pronounced?
Waimaero.
Yeah. Waimaero? It doesn't. Yeah. Anyway, it's embarrassing. Can somebody find out for me?
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, should we get started? Yeah. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you again for the chance to come in and present our update for the month. Look, it's relatively light this month in that there are no Part A's. I just want to run through a few things in the report, then we'll touch on a couple of slides in the PowerPoint. First of all, we've obviously used our community board decision-making under delegation ability. We've put in a few no stopping restrictions, and probably the big thing, and I'll touch on it sort of shortly, is around the suction tank in the Jeffreys Reserve, which did go in as well. So that was quite a big local issue. We've used the Youth Development Fund applications as well, so we've paid out some money under that. And then just, I guess, to touch on a couple of the local community issues or events, we've obviously got the Bishopdale Men's Shed, which was involved in a new community garden in Burnside, which was quite positive. We've put some money towards some lights in the Burnside Tennis Club on Avonhead Road, so again, that's a well-used facility in our patch, so it was great to use that as well. And then obviously we've got the Brindwer youth workers as well, who just continue to do great work. So look, what I'll do, we've only got a couple of slides. So the first one is around the Jeffreys Reserve pump station. So you've probably heard me for the last couple of months keep saying how that was coming to the board. It went out for consultation initially. There were a couple of challenges with it, and then it came back to us after going back out again. Look, I'm comfortable we got the right solution on that. We listened to deputations that were raised. You know, we took into consideration the feedback from the community. And as a result, we've asked staff to do a bit of sort of work around mitigating the appearance of that just for affected local residents. But I mean, I guess the point with that was it's critical infrastructure that needed to go back effectively where the old pump station was. And sometimes you kind of have to make those hard decisions, and that was one of them in our patch. Aaron might touch on now this one.
Yes, so the weed in the groins has been sprayed, which is great news. There's going to be a mechanical harvesting of that pretty soon after the chemicals had time to act, and then hopefully a little bit of cleanup won't be needed from that, but on the 14th of October the Take Kid fishing event will proceed.
Perfect. And then finally, our group of the month is the Brindwer youth workers. So Lyndon and the team do a great job working in both Cobham and Birdside Primary. They do a lot of stuff around, I guess, developing young leaders, which is really positive in our community. And particularly in those areas as well. So it gives them something to do a lot of the time after school, but it gives them sort of a bit of purpose as well. So look, a really positive thing, and as always, we like to bring something like that to you just to remember that, you know, there are really good things happening in our community. So look, like I said, short and sweet this month, and yeah, Leanne, thanks very much.
Could I just raise a point?
Yes, of course you can.
Last week I attended the Water New Zealand public consultation here in Christchurch.
Yes.
And I know that a number of the councillors and yourself, Leanne, were in the room as well, and I appreciate your being there. Water New Zealand is openly advocating for a new water regulator in New Zealand. Its Havelock North Inquiry submission focused on mandatory water treatment. In my opinion, it wants to gut councils of responsibility and install a centralised decision-making on water and on sewer, all without little public accountability and oversight. It clearly holds views different to ours and seeks to undermine local government, in my opinion. Why is the Christchurch City Council a member of Water New Zealand?
Well, it's been a member for a very long time, and this is not an appropriate use of the community board report. Yeah. So there is a mechanism for raising these issues at council by way of notice of motion and various other means, you know, the Christchurch City Council has been a member of Water NZ for a lot longer than the current executive and regime that has taken a very strong advocacy role on the issues that you've raised. But I appreciate you raising them, but this isn't quite the right context to do so. But I see that there's a never let the chance go by attitude today, so there we go.
I've got another one if you like.
No, that will do. That will do. So, Raf, would you like to move receipt of the report? And Jamie seconded. I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll try and be a lot tidier next time.
Right. Te Pātaka o Rakai Tautu Banks Peninsula Community Board report to Council. Thank you, Pam.
Look, I'm going to take an opportunity too. This is just an observation in the lift this morning. I walked up with David Adamson and he said to me, I see in Cooptown we had 100 mils of rain. Now I'm absolutely delighted that someone from the council is actually watching us what is happening on Banks Peninsula. Some of us had 145 millimetres and no, so it ranged from 30 to sort of 145 and maybe even more. So it's good to know that someone is actually watching us on Banks Peninsula and what's happening to our weather. So yeah, that's good. I need this close. Yes. Yes. Right. So this morning I'm going to be talking about Urumā Reserve Development Plan, cemeteries update, Birdling's Flat firefighting requirements, flood protection bylaw, and state highways 74 and 75. So the first one is the Urumā Reserve. Now that's not coming up. Won't move. Chris, we need a hand. We've got a picture of the development plan of the Urumā Reserve in our slides, and Urumā is a small area behind a recreation reserve area behind Littleton. I have talked about it before, but this last month, of which we only had one meeting last month, so that's why our report's pretty short this time. We made a decision. The board made the decision. We had been working with the community. We had a workshop to work with those to find a solution, a way through, but we were unable to find a clear solution. So the board ultimately decided to make the decision. So it's a mixed area. It's got walking tracks, cycling tracks, and there's an escalation of unmarked trails throughout this area. So because it's relatively small and there's cyclists that want to use it, it was decided by the board that we needed to take some decisions and make some decisions. And so it had quite a process around it. There are a number of conflicts. The board took over the decision making of it, and we've got that final decision. So we're just moving forward, and we'll be assisting the governance of that, which is the Reserve Management Committee, with good management and working well with the staff moving forward. The next one is about the cemeteries, and we are also making incredible progress with that. And you'll see in our notes there where we had deputations from our community who at the moment are very passionate about cemeteries, not only because the cemeteries bylaw handbook is under review, but because they are passionate about their cemeteries, and some of the older ones, the ones in Nakarawa, for example, which are very important to our community. So we are looking at removing some of the large pines that are in the area, that they feel as though they're are not respecting the bodies as well. The tree has more respect than what the bodies have in the cemetery, so we're looking at a way forward of resolving that, and we'll be working with that particular group. Now, how does that go up a bit? A little bit, yeah. So we're working well with the staff and with the community. So we're looking for good outcomes for that. Right, the next one. Birdling's Flat firefighting requirements. Now this is an unusual issue. There are under the FENS, the rural and the urban firefighters have been brought together, and there are some rules in the for firefighting in rural communities when a restricted water supply have to comply with with firefighting issues. And so in this Birdlings Flat community, those small properties on very small sections need to have a 27,000 litre water tank on their properties, each property at this stage. So what we're looking as a board is looking for some assistance at looking at a better way of doing it for Birdlings Flat, and maybe that there are tanks somewhere that they could all plug into and things. So it is an issue for this particular community, and there will be issues for other communities, and we're working through that. I'm not very good at moving this morning. Right. Okay, we've moved pages now. So we're now on to the next one, and I'll talk about the flood protection bylaw. Now this is around Little River, of where I've said that in Cooptown they had 100 mils of rain, that was in about a 36-hour period just recently. But this flood protection bylaw, we're off to Environment Canterbury with a submission, and we're supporting what is already what the community have already done. Now this goes back to 2014, where there were some quite major floods in Little River. The community was concerned. We had public meetings, we got a group together, a flood working party, and we went to Environment Canterbury with what we knew, with what we wanted, and we now have a flood rating district in that catchment. It's in the whole catchment of Wairera, that's the Little River catchment, and they all pay the same amount of funding. And we were just supporting that. So this is the sort of flood catchment plan that because it's around a river, and in Rural Banks Peninsula, Environment Canterbury, we're under the jurisdiction of Environment Canterbury, not the City Council, as we know. And so we had to work through a process to get it. So it was quite a process to get a river rating district around this area, but it was achieved. And we may have to look at other areas across Banks Peninsula down the track. Not an easy process to get the community to agree to pay for their own rating district. So we're just supporting that in the process. And we've got submissions all on the same day as we've got our other freedom camping ones on the 17th of August. So the last one that I'm highlighting here, and I have had an opportunity this morning, thank you team, to be able to join one of the state highways or join with a meeting that I'll be able to observe and perhaps bring to the table some of our Banks Peninsula issues around State Highway 74 and State Highway 75. So we have got a number of issues around the State Highway, and there's also some in Littleton and there's some in Akaroa, and we want to know what we have some problems with the crossing in Littleton that doesn't seem to be working appropriately. As it's suggested it should be, is that when somebody walks up to the crossing it will change lights and things. It doesn't seem to be working as it should be. So, and we have a whole list of things, so we will be going to the council, asking the State Highways group to come and talk to us and resolve a few of these issues that we have got. So you'll see there in 8.3, prior to the commencement, an assessment of how the pedestrian crossing on Norwich Quay is operating. Now, it's not operating right. Andrew can probably explain why it's not operating appropriately, but it's all about the lights don't seem to be working, don't seem to be synchronising for crossing that particular road. So there's just a few little snippets of what's come out of our minutes.
Thank you very much. I presume that you would like to move it. Yes, please. And someone, Sarah, would like to second it. So are there any questions for Pam? Yep.
Thank you for the report. It was really interesting to look at your Strengthening Communities funding.
Yes.
One name that I didn't see on there that I expected to see on there was the O'Kane's Bay Museum. So I just wondered if they applied or why they're not funded through the community board.
Well, it hasn't. They have made some. This is not the right fund. I don't think that it goes through, does it? I can't actually answer that, Yanni. But there is some special work that is being done with the O'Kane's Bay community around the reserve and the museum at the moment. But no, this was. I think they might have missed the timeline for their funding. Andrew, can you remember what happened around that?
I don't have the detail. I know there have been detailed discussions between Nigel at the museum and Penelope Goldstone, the community governance manager, around what the most appropriate source of funding from council would be. I imagine Nigel would have taken that advice and responded accordingly, but I don't have the detail to hand. I'm sorry, no.
No. So it obviously didn't come across our table at that time.
All right. Anything else? No? I will put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Grace.
And the next is the Waitai Coastal Burwood Community Board report to council.
Good morning, Leanne. Good morning, councillors, staff and community. Very kindly today we have Gary Watson filling in for our lovely Joe Wells. This morning we have no Part A's and the Community Board decisions under delegation. We have the usual, as you can see on the report, we have the usual beginning of the financial year allocations of various funds. We can put those out there. The second picture that we have isn't actually in your report, but I thought it would be really nice just to touch on these. We do have a second picture on the report.
We do?
Yep. Awesome. Here we've got the children from Rafferty School planting. We had a planting day down there and they came along and got involved in that. Apparently there's a bit of a video and we'll probably like to show that next time round, but it's just fantastic to see our children getting involved and taking ownership and being able to come back to the site in years to come and see what they've actually planted themselves.
It's for that one. It's the next one. You have no notes for?
Sure. That's all right. That what happens when Joe's away. We get a little bit confused. So then, on to the next thing. I don't have a picture for that, this next one. So the residential unit overlay mission, we resolved that to write to members of Parliament, Poto Williams and Ruth Dyson, to progress updating the council's district plan using Section 71 powers under the Regeneration Act to reinstate the residential unit overlay clause 5.2.2.1a as presented to the independent hearings panel and original evidence by the council. Now the reason why we passed this, resolved this was because that we had a request from the community by correspondence. They needed our support in this to approach the MPs, which the whole board supported. And after the joint resource consent meeting, that was further supported by the Limerick Central Executive Community Board, as you've heard. The next thing we have on the list there is, actually, sorry, we don't have a picture for this. It's really quite exciting. It's the Eastern Community Sport and Recreational Corporation. They applied for a lease to be granted over the 4 tennis courts in Rafferty Domain. And we were delighted. You've probably seen pictures of the big white canopy. Community were engaged about this and it was an overwhelming support to go proceed with that. So there's going to be 4 courts that are going to be resurfaced. There's going to be additional lighting. Sand volleyball court's going to be updated and the old tennis pavilion that actually sits on that site could possibly be handed over to them as well. And the board also granted a licence to this community group for the construction of a radio controlled car track. So that's really exciting. So we're keen for this to get going as soon as possible, and they've done a huge amount of work, Eastern Community Sport and Rec, so this is quite an exciting project for that domain, of that area. So then we have significant council projects in our ward area. Neighbourhood Week, you all know about that. Time to get cosy with your neighbours. Kai is always a great draw card to gather people, and it's a really fun opportunity to get to know your neighbours, so you have it all in your area, and I think this is a really great initiative of council and the wider team that are organising that. We do have a picture now. So here we have Denell Sports Park, very damaged in the earthquake, sitting in the middle of the red zone there, and the Burwood East Residents Association lobbied us. They had some issues there with the fact of the way that the red zone was sort of boarded off there. So we had a really great site meeting with staff and with LINZ and representatives from the board and the Residents Association Burwood East, and it was a really good meeting because all of us were able to hear the concerns look at the actual facts that were there and able to come to some really good actions, that, outcomes there. So that was a great opportunity to resolve some of those issues there for the community. Public forums, I just want to mention under the briefings and public forums, these things are really, opportunity for the community to come to these is really working very well for our community. Just to take up that opportunity, so it's providing them, as you know, to be able to share what they want to share with us and connect with us as a board in a more informal way. So as you can see there, number 4, we've had Avon Heathcote Estuary Ebutai Trust came, gave us a little bit of a briefing, and then we had the Pikiko Centre, and we had, doing really well there, Gary, and we had Environment Canterbury Transport come and talk to us with the concerns that we have about our bus route. So we're going to pursue that as a community board. We really feel that there is a wellbeing issue here with our buses being stopped in certain places. The next picture that we have is, these are just absolutely amazing pieces of art that used to be installed on the Anzac Bridge. The fronds, absolutely stunning. The board are really keen to see that these pieces of art are reinstated in some capacity. So we've, staff have looked into this and with the NZTA and making some really good inquiries as to how can we possibly get these visually back up in our area. So we're looking forward to seeing what the results come from there. The next thing I have on my list is the Broadhaven Bower Ave residents came to us about some concerns about the roundabout there, and again we had a site meeting with staff, a really very positive meeting, and staff were able to offer some advice there and some things that were able to actually resolve those issues, so they will be implemented in due course. So another great outcome, really positive. So the Breeze Walking Festival is up in action, as you probably all know. All the information is in these books that can be found at various places like the libraries and other places to find out exactly where the walks are over the city from the 29th of September to the 14th of October. And we've got some pictures there with some kids. It's just a bear hunt. I'm sure some of you with kids with dogs stay out, righto. I don't have a dog, but I'm sure some of you do. Enjoy that. Now we're really excited about this. As Akaroa people will know, we've had the issues with the Freedom Campers. As a community board, we asked staff if they could possibly look at the signage and just enable our Freedom Campers to have a little bit more information on hand quickly, and they have done that. And look at this. This is just a fantastic outcome. We've got new signs that have been produced that link the, what do they call it, a QR code, so they can click on that, these young ones that know how to do all that, and find out where all the campsites are in Christchurch. And we've also got arrows there pointing them into the direction of the Spencer Park, Holiday Park and the South Brighton camping grounds. And also they're going to put a couple of new signs on both the New Brighton South and North Ramp. So that was another fantastic outcome, just to help these issues with the freedom camping that we're having. So thanks staff for doing that, very artistic. That was great. The next thing, this was a really nice occasion too. We had a tiny hut handover. A lot of you will remember that we had the Tiny Hut initiative for New Brighton, and there's a few things that were put in there, but this one here needed to find a new home. It was getting a little bit tired, so it was a really great collaboration. Smile Dial New Zealand were offered this and said, hey, would you like to have this on your site, on your sensory garden? So this is a fantastic outcome. We had a little bit of a handover ceremony there, and staff and Coast Care staff, or City Care staff, were really helpful in this, making all of this happen. So that was fantastic. Going back to the next Freedom Camping Initiative. Oh yeah, no slide, but the Freedom Camping Initiative, the board were very pleased that there was some funding through the government's Tourism Facilities Development Grant for Thompson Park toilets as part of the Freedom Camping Initiative. So that is most appreciated, because we've got a new plan there for Thompson Park, landscaping plan, and these toilets are going to be perfect, because the issues that we have Freedom Camping is straight across the road. So that's excellent. We had another site meeting with Dallington Residents Association. They brought up some issues about Dallington Bridge and some traffic concerns there. So again, we had transport staff on hand just to hear what the residents had to say, and again they took those issues on board and are going to go away and see if there's anything that can be done about those. So the Dallington Residents Association were also very appreciative of the staff and coming forward on that. And just to to highlight the last thing, we had a joint community board meeting with Papanui Innes with the Ministry of Education, just regarding the zoning. We had plenty of information given to us, but I suppose just to let everyone know here that to get that information, you just need to go to their website, which is called Shaping Education, and all the information's there, and you can find out all the processes of their decision. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions? David, you'd like to move it? Seconded by Glenn. Any discussion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next is the Waihoro Spraden Cashmere Community Board. Welcome.
Kia ora tātou. Waihoro, for me, is almost as hard to pronounce as everybody else's, but we're thrilled to have our name as well.
All right, yeah, I'll speak to this. This is the Christchurch Youth Council Community Series, so it kicked off in Spraden, Cashmere, so it's sort of a joint initiative by the Christchurch Youth Council, who under their wing they've got the Spraden Cashmere Youth Community Voices is the name of what was our Youth Community Board, and so they held this event on Saturday with the aim of getting young people to come along to pitch an idea of something that they would like to see happening in Spraden Cashmere. And so 2 of the 3 pitches turned up. One was about TEDx Youth. They were very professional young people. One of them, anyhow, they wanted to do basically a TEDx Youth event that they can invite 100 people to. The other pitch was about a youth market in our area on Centennial Park. And then the third one, the girl wasn't able to come, but it was about bike safety. She was from South Intermediate and wanted sort of personalised high-vis, sort of fluoro tops to wear when they're biking. And it was a really great event. The TEDx Youth one won it, so they were getting some funding. But it was just really great to be a part of that and to see that the youth in that area are doing something. And we were allowed to speak as well, so we talked, Carolyn and I, about community board and what we do, so that we sort of spread the word about how we can help them. So it was really lovely.
It was great. Good food too. This was our Community Service and Youth Service Awards, which we held in the old stone house, and that is such a fantastic building for this kind of occasion. Oh, what did she say?
It is, eh?
Oh, yeah, I know. If you look at those red cheeks, it gives away the gin intake bit, I think. Honestly. But anyway, it is the greatest place. You have a look at that. It is the greatest place to have this kind of occasion. For some reason, it has a real warmth about it in terms of people circulating and going from table to table and talking to one another. The staff provided all the food. They still won't do cream lamingtons when I ask them. But apart from that, I know that, no, you can't get good servants. But they provided all the food and went amongst the tables distributing the food, and the atmosphere was fantastic. And it was a really, really enjoyable occasion. And you will notice that we've had wonderful media, better than any other board's media. In the Southern News.
Southern View.
And Southern View. These are the Craycroft gardeners who have been gardening for 25 years in Craycroft House, and amongst them is Caro, who is a Craycroft, herself, and her great-great-grandfather was the one who built the original building. But many of these people have served the community in so many different ways that you'd like to go through the list of people that are sitting there looking at us and talk just about them. But all the people who received the awards were wonderful and inspirational.
Can I just say, can you go back on, Grace, to the boys? With these boys, I mean, when they came up, they had their head down. They were kind of embarrassed to be getting an award, and it was just so lovely because they do. I can't remember what they did now, but they do such a lot of work. And we heard comments from some of the older people on the other side of the ward saying that they were so pleased to see them there because they don't hear the types of work that they do. So that was for me the highlight.
Yeah, it was. It was great. It was great.
Community events project. Yeah. We've got a community events funding as a board that came from Barrington Big Fund that we're no longer holding, so people can come to the board and request funding for an event that they want to hold locally, and then they also will get training by Emma Pavey on the what's it called, Get Set Go program. So this is one that's going to be held quite soon, held by youth at the Presbyterian Church up in Macmillan Reserve in October, and it's a Cashmere Carnival, so we're very excited and can't wait to go.
No, that's right. Yes, well, this is part of the huge media we are attracting, and we haven't paid any money to Ruth at all in mentioning us. She's talking about the Age Friendly Initiative, which is isn't that an appalling name? Anybody who's got some imaginative name for an age-friendly initiative, please come and talk to us, because could it be more drear? Could you fall asleep quicker? Age-friendly. But the project itself is very exciting, and it is about supporting and walking shoulder to shoulder and having an adventure with those people who are older. And we are thinking of initiatives that we can take in our ward with people who are older, fitter, healthier than they've ever been in those age groups. Oh, this is terrific. The staff, because I think it's chicken and egg, but our board is always pressed on the issue of disability access, and the staff came to us with a proposal for the renovation of Barrington Playground, which is a very popular playground next door to the library and next door to the mall, with the renovation to be disability access oriented. And it opens on Saturday. But we've already seen the teenagers coming to the park and lying in the disability swing, just for example, with their headphones on, lying like this, blissfully. So we are thinking about how we can say to them quietly and gently that people with disability must have priority. But the teenagers are very welcome in the dark and in the night to lie on some of the things in our playground. When the people with disability aren't there, the teenagers are very welcome to come, and they might like to come at night like they do to the Margaret Mayhew, where they have a lot of fun as well. So, but we are very much looking forward to it, and as usual, the staff have come up with a really good idea and called it the Superheroes Picnic. So we've got the challenge of dressing up as well for the opening. Oh, God knows. Something that'll hide the red cheeks. You go.
Barrington. Barrington Mall, so we got the funding, of course, from the LTP, which was really fantastic, and then there's been consultation, and we've actually got 153 submissions now. And the consultation process, Spraden Neighbourhood Network, who've led this, they commented yesterday, they just came to our board meeting, or on Tuesday, about how they were very happy with how that went, because the consultation team worked with them to do consultations both in the library, but where Spraden Neighbourhood Network meet as well, and they were very pleased with how it went. And some people have suggested some very small, tiny little alterations to the plan, but I think overall everyone's very pleased with how it's going after all of these years. Yeah.
And we are too. Craycroft is one of our suburbs that has been called Hoonhay by the City Council for all of these years, and the suburb has got a very active residents association which used to provide a welcome pack to every new person who came into the Craycroft area, but the new developments up Wolsey's Road, etc., have made that impossible to maintain. But they are an extraordinarily active group of people, one or two of whom were amongst those gardeners that we showed before. And they're an extraordinarily active group, and they would have liked to have had their own name and not Hoonhay, which is quite a few k's away. So, and Helene Mountner on our board had another go at it, and using the fact that the name was recognised by the National, Craycroft was recognised by the Geographic Board and the National Roads Board and all sorts of other organisations, and the only one who still called it Hoonhay was Christchurch City Council, and that has now been rectified, and they're very pleased and chuffed. Is that it? Oh, and I also want to mention briefly that the Heskett River Network volunteers had their anniversary celebration on Saturday, to end of July, Saturday the 28th of July, and that again was led by Helene, who was one of the founders of the River Network, which is a very effective body that links all the organisations based on the river, right from us down to the sea. And these organisations are active through the River Network, and for instance are the ones that invented the mother of all cleanups. And we're very happy and pleased that that was initiated in our ward and led by a community board member. Thank you. And what?
You know, I was going to finish.
Oh, right.
I've forgotten. So two things. We had I organised a Zone 5 community board meeting for last Friday. We had very good attendance from Banks Peninsula, not so much from the city, and then from community board members all the way from Motueka, Golden Bay, and then all around like Selwyn and everywhere else. So there's about 20 people altogether. They were very happy to come along, and we did. It was 10 till 3. So, and people have given me nice feedback afterwards, including Pam. But I've decided to step down from that position. We had an election of sorts where there was one nomination, and that was Alexandra Davids, who was a deputy, so she's now the Zone 5 representative, okay? And then the other thing, just very quickly, is that it's because I'm on the Summit Road, I've got, and Carolyn's got one of these as well, but they've got a new t-shirt, which is for Predator Free.
Yay!
So this here, if you haven't seen it already, that bird, they had a competition for something to put on the t-shirt for kids, and they had it for different age ranges, and this was the winning design by a girl called Willow, who's around about 11 or 12, and so they're selling them, and this is to support the Predator Free initiative that they've got. So just to make you aware, it's got Summit Road on the front, so you should get one.
Yeah, thank you. Well, we've gone a little bit over time, so we'll take it moved by Tim and seconded by Phil, and I'll put the motion. I'm sorry, but thank you very much. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you. The next is the Waipapa Papanui Innis Community Board.
Hi everyone. We have no parties in our report either this month. We have a few bits and pieces. You can do that bit. This is much awaited by the community. This is the St Albans Park. It really hasn't been able to operate to its full potential for the last 8 years, obviously, but prior to that as well because of poor drainage. The ground itself has been delayed as far as completion goes because of the weather. It's been very, very wet but the pavilion itself, we are soft opening. We are inviting some community, inviting community along to the soft opening on the 15th of September. Oh yes, this is really lovely. We've been meeting and talking with residents in the Dudley Street Works area, and clearly there's been a lot of stress. This is a Richmond, Dallington, Maidahau, primarily Shirley and Dallington area. And for a very long time, residents there have had to manage an awful lot of disruption. And on August the 31st, the official end of the Dudley Creek Flood Mitigation Scheme works occurred, if you have an occurrence of an ending. The two site compounds were wound up and handed back, and the bulk of the Dudley Creek contractors were out of the area on the 31st, and this is something that was clearly signalled to the community in meetings and communications with them. There's still some planting that's still to go on. I'll come back to the letters in a moment, but this is the kind of technically challenged. So we have had, that's the finished product at the bottom for water, obviously. There's been some really beautiful planting in the area as well, which is making a huge difference to the amenity there. And roads have been reopening again, which also is pretty important to the amenity and the community. One of the issues remains, and it is a major issue, and that is the condition of the roads generally and pavements. However, that is being looked at by staff, and we will be addressing that in early October directly with the community when we have our follow-up community meeting. So that's been called for and heard by the community board and by staff. There was a letter, going back to the letters that, and this was an initiative from Joe Byrne, actually, who prior to being on the community board was very involved in the Flockton flooding issue as a spokesperson and very well connected. So she went back to some of the Flockton residents to explain, and they already knew anyway because of the coverage, but the stress and anxiety and disruption that the people in the area that the Dudley Creek works are being done in, and the St Albans Creek works are being done in, but they actually don't see the outcome of that. This is being done for further down the line. So the Flockton Basin people wrote these really lovely, heartfelt notes that were communicated to the Shirley Richmond community. This is one letter that came from Angela and Phil, and they said, "To the residents of the Richmond area, we want to pass on our sincere appreciation to the residents of Richmond for what they have had to go through over the last few years during the flood mitigation works for the Flockton Basin area. We can only imagine how difficult the constant noise, stress, road closures, disruption to businesses, amongst many other things, have been for you, and we want to pass on and thank you for your understanding. As a previous resident at the lower end of Flockton, I remember the stress and anxiety with each heavy rainfall, the lifting of everything in the house, the leaving home with our young baby toddler every time the water reached the bottom of the house, and the anxious wait to come back the next day to see how bad the damage was. I'm so thankful that the current residents in the Flockton Basin don't have to go through that again and again, and it is because of you and what you have endured in recent times that they can comfortably live in their homes and continue on with their lives without fear and anxiety. A very heartfelt thank you." So those messages really were well received, and I thank Joe Byrne for that initiative and obtaining that. Continuing through, we are still dealing with roading issues in the ward. Primarily these are primarily the main concerns. We have the Cranford Street Downstream Mitigation Plan, which is in process at the moment, and the board is having or will be hearing a report back from the roading engineer, who has seen, listened, understood all of the issues through the submissions, and he will be putting those into a plan and speaking to the community board about those and getting feedback from us. There is another opportunity for the community to be consulted and feedback as we move forward on this really difficult issue. The Breeze Walking Festival, that is city-wide, but of course we've got some great areas in the Papanui Innes ward that we will be being involved in that. I also wanted to quickly mention the Main North Road Bus Priority project, which was to be decided by the board at our last meeting, and that was actually laid on the table while we asked for some more information. This is with regards to the little bit between, and an important bit, from Harewood Road to Winston Ave, and we asked for more information after hearing from the businesses, so that is still in train. I also wanted to mention the time capsule that we are opening on the 14th of September. This is going to be really cool because we don't know what's in it, and this is the time capsule that was in the former resource centre in St Albans, the St Albans Community Centre. It was known as and used as well, and we're opening that with local school kids and others from the community on the 14th of September, and then starting a project on setting a new one up and working out what goes into that, and again the schools will be key in that. I also wanted to mention the 125th anniversary of Women Achieving the Vote. As you will all know, that's being celebrated this year. The reason I'm mentioning this is that there is a woman in our ward called Rachel Harris who's on the board of the National Council of Women. I've just stepped down from the board of the National Council of Women as we continue to deal with EQC and insurance issues in Christchurch. It's just taking too much of my time. So the Prime Minister is the keynote speaker at an event at the Isaac Theatre Royal on the 13th of September. And she'll underline the role of Christchurch as the birthplace of the suffrage movement. And of course the National Council of Women, headed by Kate Shepherd, had the first meeting in Christchurch 122 years ago. That was 3 years after women achieved the right to vote. It's a very different group of women heading that organisation now, but they've just recently announced Helen Clark as the patron of the organisation. It was fantastic to see her at the national conference last weekend. I'd like to finish with a shameless plug for the Kate Shepherd Memorial Trust Suffrage 125th celebration and fundraiser, which is taking place on Wednesday the 19th of September at the Knox Church at 6:30, and it will feature Gayleen Preston. So it will be a really awesome event. It's called Herstory, Misadventures in Filmland, an evening of entertainment, mixing and mingling with refreshments. If you want to know any more about that, you can get in touch with me through Facebook or Google the Kate Shepherd Memorial Trust Award, and I hope that you go along and see that. It will be a fantastic event. Thank you.
Now, Mike and Pauline would like to move and second the report. There's a couple of minutes there. Does anyone have any questions? David?
Yeah, you just want to have a matter of curiosity, and I may have missed it, but the time capsule that you have lifted, how old is it and when was it created?
God, 90 years old? No, 90 years old, isn't it? Yeah, 90 years old.
Oh,
yeah.
Fantastic. I'm sure there'll be some.
There might be a picture of you in there, Dave.
Yeah, well, quite likely.
Sorry.
Now, all right, I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you very much. But we'll just take a, we're taking a 10 to 15 minute break. I know that some of you wanted to get an update on a couple of matters, and Brendan, you're going to go out the back, and those that are keen on that can go with Brendan, and the rest of us can go and get tea or coffee. So we'll see you back here at say 11:25. We'll start up again. Thanks. Right, could I invite Paula Smith, Arapata Reuben and Alan Lim from the 3 zone committees to join us at the front of the table? Thank you. None of you is recognisable as Alan Lim. Right. Okay, thank you.
I probably don't look much like Arapata either.
No, you don't. Right.
He sends his apology, as does the Deputy Chair. They're both unable to attend today. So I'm Kevin Brown. I'm a community member on the Christchurch West Mountain Zone Committee. I'll go first. The first thing we want to talk about is groundwater protection. One of the main issues at the moment for the Zone Committee is the groundwater modelling that's shown that there's groundwater from the Waimea district flowing underneath the Waimakariri River into the Christchurch city groundwaters. The modelling shows that there's a high probability of the deeper Christchurch aquifers receiving some of this water, and it also predicts that it'll affect particularly the northeastern sector groundwater over the longer term. At the moment, the principal focus has been on nitrate concentrations, which are predicted to increase. The Waimakariri district itself has some serious problems with nitrate concentrations in their groundwater, and the Waimakariri Zone Committee has been active in consultation with farmers in their area. Because of the modelling results, the Christchurch West Mountain Zone Committee, we've had 2 joint meetings with the Waimakariri Zone Committee, and after these meetings, the Christchurch Zone Committee commended the work being done by the Waimakariri Zone Committee in its targets for the nitrate limits in their groundwater. The consultation process with farmers in the Waimakariri area is now largely complete, and a staged approach to reducing the nitrate load is being proposed. This staged approach requires that farmers in the area will eventually require even better than good management practice in order to meet the targets. And this is quite severe. Current modelling suggests that the Christchurch drinking water in the affected areas in Christchurch City will rise slightly in the short to longer term, but will ultimately be less than 50% of the maximum allowable value within the proposed targets. Consequently, it's unlikely to result in a drinking water health hazard from the nitrate concentrations. I'll be presenting the information to the ITI committee next week in more detail, and I believe you have a meeting on Friday as well with the water fund where you hear more about it. So that was the groundwater, stormwater and streams. The Zone Committee is supportive of all efforts that improve the stormwater quality, which in turn improves the quality of the water in the urban streams and rivers. Last year, the Christchurch Zone Committee had a very successful public interaction at the Meet in the Middle event at Kerrs Reach, and at that, the Stormwater Superhero logo, which I believe you have in your agenda, was first used at this event. I was going to wear the t-shirt, but the frost this morning went against it. We'll be present again at this year's event, and since then the logo has been used at many different events to do with stormwater. Zone Committee members in their Stormwater Superhero shirts have been present at outdoor film evenings, Mother of All cleanups and other community events. One new aspect is we're looking to produce a mobile stormwater education resource, probably on something that is towable like a trailer, that can be located at public events. It'll be available to community groups, schools and so on to try and educate the general public on what happens to their stormwater. And in the process to try and change the behaviour. Research shows that about 60% of Christchurch residents don't actually realise that drains lead to streams and rivers and then mainly untreated to the sea. Better to restrict pollution of the stormwater through education rather than have to treat our rivers and streams at the end result. Better the fence at the top of the cliff rather than the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. The Zone Committee would like to thank the Council for promoting the copper-free brake pads motion at the recent local government forum. This was one of the stormwater programs that the Zone Committee initiated, so we thank you very much for that, and I hear it passed very successfully. 2 of our committee were present at a recent field day for developers and contractors to address the problems with erosion and sediment from primarily the Port Hills entering the Heathcote River. This is a particularly serious problem after the Port Hills fires, where the erosion is now greatly increased. The field day was the second such event. We held one last year, and it was extremely well attended. And I should add that there's recently been 2 significant fines imposed for breaches of the sediment control in this area, so as well as the carrot, there is the big stick. The Cashmere Stream, another nice thing, made the Cawthron New Zealand River Award finals for the restoration and planting work on the springs and the headwaters. There's a planting day this Saturday if councillors would like to see some of the immediate steps funding in action. It's up at the spring head of the Cashmere Stream. The Zone Committee is working with ECAN and the Council and volunteers to put in a possible funding application for the Heathcote to the Billion Trees Fund that the government is funding. Moving on, the Zone Committee is floating a revival of the concept of a drylands park. The concept was first proposed way back in 1997. The proposal was, and I quote, to capture the experience in broad vistas of formerly extensive primeval grasslands, shrublands and woodlands in the Canterbury Plains. The park would ensure the ongoing protection of the nationally unique in New Zealand dry grassland environment that would give a dry plains experience similar to the savannas, the veldt steppes, the American prairies or the South American pampas. Biotas such as the last significant stands of very old kowhai trees, which I'm sure you've all seen, close to Christchurch would be included in the park. Some of the land there is already under an ecological heritage status. We're currently in conversation with the biodiversity ranger at ECAN and the lease manager of the ECAN land about future opportunities for the park in the ECAN land south of the Waimakariri River. Deputations to the Zone Committee. Recent deputations to the committee included one from the East Lake Trust and the Avon Heathcote Ihutai Trust. The East Lake Trust were presenting their case for the East Lake in the red zone. There was some lively discussion afterwards. A number of questions arose, and these were addressed by the 2 trust members present. Additional information was required by the Zone Committee, and the East Lake Trust was going to make some of their submissions to regenerate Christchurch available to the Zone Committee. The Avon Heathcote Estuary Trust gave a presentation about the work of the Trust. One message to this council came out of the discussions was that the Trust expressed a preference for the dual cycleway walkway along Humphreys Drive to pass through Charlesworth Reserve adjacent to Humphreys Drive rather than on the estuary side of the road. The Zone Committee congratulated the Trust on becoming an international flyway site, one of only 3 in New Zealand for the Godwits. Finally, at the most recent meeting of the Zone Committee, Belinda Margetts of the Christchurch City Council presented the results of the 2017 Surface Water Quality Monitoring Report. Unfortunately, the results confirm that the urban stream syndrome is still prevalent in Christchurch City, which just makes our stormwater superhero even more important. Thanks a lot.
Excellent, thank you very much. Now, I think probably because of the issues involved, we'll start with this one and then have questions and then move on to the other 2 if that's all right. I knew Vicky would. Vicky, Phil, oh gosh, Pauline, Yanni, Andrew. I'm just mindful of the fact that we are time limited, but also that we have got a water forum on Friday week, tomorrow week. Yeah.
I will be very brief because I appreciate those. Just in terms of the leaching of the nitrates under the Waimak, what area of land is actually involved in the Waimak District Council that's responsible for that?
It has been reasonably well defined by the modelling. It's, I don't know quite how you express it, without a map here, it's west of Cust.
No, what land area? Like?
Oh, sorry, I haven't got.
You don't know. Okay, I'll find out later.
I don't have those numbers.
Yeah, so Phil.
Thank you, Kevin. I just, the research you really were telling us about regarding the nitrate concentrates and groundwater coming from the Waimakariri district and impacting on aquifers. So I just wanted to were ECAN involved with that research too, or have they confirmed that that data you were?
Yeah, the modelling was through a multi-organisation approach. There was ECAN involved, there was Aqualink, there was GNS, so there were a large number of people, and there was some, they were trying to get agreement about the modelling. There have been some things in the past where agreement has not been reached, but as well as that, they drilled 9 special wells on both the Waimakariri side and on McLean's Island and out at West Melton, because their model was suggesting that there was a downflow in that area, and they drilled the wells to actually prove that there was indeed a downflow, and this was confirmed by the actual real measurements. So the modelling was a multi-organisation approach.
Thanks.
Thank you. Pauline? No? Andrew?
Thank you. Just referring to the very last line in the written information that we've got here, relating to the interzone groundwater nitrate issue. I mean, clearly this is something that we in Christchurch have got a significant interest in, given the interzonal nature of the problem. We don't have the benefit of an update of the type you've just given from the Waimakariri Zone Committee. Public feedback will be sought on the draft Waimakariri Zip Addendum Solutions Package in September. What process or what type of avenues are there for that feedback? Are there public meetings? Will there be a formal submissions and hearings process? What does public feedback look like, and what are the processes for capturing it?
This is still up in the air at the moment, but we're talking about things like a walk-in day, where we have both committees present and people can walk in off the street, and we'll all be there to answer questions. At the moment, I mean, there's a large consultation process currently going on in Waimakariri, very large, not so much in Christchurch.
And that's exactly what worries me, that, you know, we've got an issue that affects Christchurch, possibly affects Christchurch to a greater extent, or at least to the same extent as it affects Waimakariri, yet we're not involved in the consultation and the engagement to anything like the same degree.
The Zone Committee recognises this as a problem, and there will be opportunities for public participation later on. But at the moment, they're still sorting out what's happening in Waimakariri, so that when that becomes finished, or when that comes to a conclusion, and we have a definite way forward, then there will be some.
Excellent. So I guess my request really is, can we just make sure that we as a council are kept informed of our opportunity to participate, whether through our councillor representation on your committee, or through these updates, or by updates to our relevant committee, or whatever is
sure,
appropriate.
Well, Pauline's on our council, on the Zone Committee, sorry. Pauline's on our Zone Committee, sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I think that the Water Forum is also an opportunity where we sit down with ECAN, which is the other partner in the Canterbury Water Management Strategy, and and I think it will be really important that we, you know, bring Waimakariri, you know, into the picture, because, as you say, the strategies that they develop in relation to a much more immediate and pressing problem on their side of the river, in relation to their groundwater.
They do have serious problems.
They do,
yes.
They do, I know that, yeah. Yanni, did you have a question?
Yeah, I mean, I just was just really concerned around the silt runoff. Last night I went for a walk along the Heathcote River through closer to the Ferrymaid side, you know, and the estuary, and just people keep saying that they just can't believe the colour of the water, and so I just kind of wonder what we're actually doing. You've said that 2 people were prosecuted.
Yes.
It just seems to me like initially after the fires, I think we asked what was going on, and the advice back we had was we haven't seen it at an increased level than what would be normal, so we don't think there's been a huge impact. But just looking at the river and hearing from people that walk along the river, they seem to think that there has been a significant impact of sediment and stuff going into the river, especially at that lower level. So can you just give us any understanding of what other work we could do, we should do, to try and address that? if that's been actively discussed.
Probably not the best person to talk to, but there are, like I said, we had this field day, which was for contractors and developers who are developing things on the Port Hills, and there is ECAN has published a sediment guidelines. I need some help here. And there's a program, an app you can get into, and these show what you need to do for any particular place along the Port Hills to stop the sediment getting into the river. So stuff is available out there, and we've had 2 field days for contractors and developers. But basically this has been the wettest winter we've had for a very long time, and that of course,
which is why the water table's so high.
Do you think it's do you think having actually an active joint monitoring and enforcement regime rather than just guidelines would be beneficial? I mean, I just don't know how much monitoring goes on.
I'm not in that.
I think these are questions that we should put on the agenda for the Water Forum.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I think it's becoming quite urgent when we see the results from that survey that
the
current approach isn't working.
Well, there are programs in place for retention ponds. The problem is that Port Hills are composed mainly of loess. Loess is wind-blown dust and dirt, basically. It's extremely fine. It's very hard to get out. A settlement pond quite often doesn't do it, and you need chemical treatment to flocculate the very small particles. So it is a difficult problem, and it's peculiar to the Port Hills because of the geological composition of the hills.
Thank you. Look, Paula Smith,
so that's an excellent segue into my next comment, which it is not peculiar to the Port Hills. It happens all over Banks Peninsula, and it's affecting the Selwyn catchments as well.
Right.
Sediment, it's our big issue. And the other point I would make is that the majority of people who live in the Banks Peninsula zone get their water supply from the groundwater systems that Christchurch City Council manages. So we're affected by, if there's a risk associated with nitrates, our communities are affected as well. Anyway, getting back to business, since I last came on the 7th of June, we've had 3 meetings. The first was in June on Governor's Bay, where we further explored forestry issues with both staff who provide advice about the new National Environmental Standard for Plantation Forestry, and from members of the public, and we're aware that the new NES will have an impact and will result in amendments both to the regional plans and to your Christchurch City Council district plan. 17th of July, our meeting was in Littleton, and we had a paper about the Perch Springs of Banks Peninsula, a presentation by University of Canterbury volcanologist Dr. Sam Hampton. There's a very high level of community interest in this matter, and from that were 2 recommendations mainly directed at council, because the information that we were presented highlighted the risks and opportunities for the management of the recharge zones for these groundwater systems, and the potential for problems with Christchurch City Council proposals for deep well injection of Akaroa's wastewater, and also possibly opportunities for community water supply at O'Kane's Bay, which might be cheaper and better, possibly. So, and also at that meeting, the Zone Committee allocated most of its $100,000 budget of immediate steps funding to 6 projects across Banks Peninsula. We also have resolved to have an annual funding round, a formal one, rather than just deal with these applications as they arrive, because we are now at the point where it's oversubscribed. And then the 3rd meeting we've had since I last spoke to you was at Birdings Flat on the 21st of August, where we had a deputation from the leader of the Akuti Valley project about the issue which is in your agenda about the fencing, about many things, one of which was that Akuti Valley is a spawning site for lamprey, but
also about the fencing of the Esplanade Reserve, which was an issue that they've raised before, and I'm pleased to be able to tell you that that has since been resolved. At that meeting, it wasn't clear that the new fence was to be totally funded, but since then, apparently it now is, and the stock will be kept out of that particular section of Esplanade Reserve. We also talked about briefly about the Christchurch City Council's global stormwater consent application, and we had a brief update on the council's Sites of Ecological Significance program. Our next meeting is on the 18th of September coming up. It's in Akaroa, and the main topic will be the new season's water quality monitoring results. So we've got our fingers crossed that we might see some improvement in at least some of our streams. We've also in the last month had an excellent face-to-face workshop, Pam and I, with ECAN councillors, and this and another couple of things that that have come up. One is the Akuti fence, and another issue about trying to get some names on some of our streams on local roads, on the bridges. They've made us think a bit about this forum as a means of communicating with you, this quarterly update report. And this is our one and only opportunity to interact at a governance to governance level with you people. And apart from our excellent member, Councillor Turner, who is on our committee, and I've just got a question about why it was that the zone committee's minutes stopped going to the ITI committee, and because to me, I mean, I'm even listening to the community board reports, there's a lot of interest in these water management things, and this doesn't seem like a particularly effective way to resolve things, or we have no ability to organise, hardly any ability to influence funding. We can't make submissions on the annual plan or anything like that, and I think there's a growing level of frustration about, you know, this level of conversation is not particularly effective. So I just wonder whether you might give that some thought.
I think what happened there is because we decided, well, I thought it was better to come to this forum because it was more inclusive for all councillors to hear what was going on. And I think we were doing it monthly, and now we've gone quarterly. But that was the intention, to actually have a broader forum and have more councillors involved rather than just the committee.
Anyway, I'll just leave that with you. You can have a talk amongst yourselves. Ask yourselves whether this is, do we add value to what you do by doing it this way? I don't know.
Well, the only reason really to bring it here is that councillors had no line of sight that we're in a partnership with ECAN over the zone committees through the Canterbury Water Management Strategy. And without a reporting line that brought all of the councillors around the table, it didn't seem to. But I mean, I agree that making deputations to committees isn't actually the most. I mean, essentially that's what you're doing. Isn't the effective way of decision making? No way. But that's not what this is for. This is to make sure that there is awareness and that there's public awareness. I mean, a lot of the issues that you've raised have ended up in the media because you've come and presented them to the council.
Yes, but it would be quite good to be able to have face-to-face conversations that were, not necessarily in that context.
No, well, I agree, and it seems to me that the water forum that we have with ECAN would be the most effective place for that to occur.
I'd be quite happy to have the minutes come through ITI as well, if that's what. If you think that would be a good idea.
Well, I don't know.
I mean, they could come every month to ITI.
Yeah.
And then we just have the quarterly forums here as well. That might be the way forward.
And then if there's a particular issue that wants to come up, but I think I'd rather also find a way of wrapping this into the water forums that we're having, sort of bi-monthly with ECAN.
Yeah. But I wonder why we as zone committees aren't at the water forum. If there is something going on talking about water, why aren't we there as zone committees?
I'm sorry, look, we established a relationship with ECAN, and started a governance to governance meeting arrangement between councillors and commissioners at the time, and subsequently it split into two, and 1 month would be a water forum, and then the following time but they're only held every 2 months, are they? I can't remember exactly off the top of my head, but and then the next 2 months it's a generic one, so it's not a water forum all the time. But I mean, it's a perfectly valid point that's been raised, and I've just said that wouldn't it be better to provide an inclusive way of bringing the zone committees into the water forum. The next one is Friday week, so just leave it with us and we'll see what we can do. Andrew.
Thank you. A couple of questions, and just picking up your point, Paula, on the minutes. Where do the minutes currently go? Obviously they come back to the committee to be reported back at its next meeting, but do those minutes currently get reported to ECAN or the City Council in any formal way?
I don't think they come to the City Council in any formal way. Do they?
They
used
come
to come to the Community Board.
Yeah, they do come to the Community Board. They are circulated
For a while, they stopped going there too.
Yes, I mean, in my view, it's appropriate they come to the Community Board, but it may well be that we consider bringing them to ITI as well, as Pauline has suggested. So, and at ECAN, do they go? Are they reported to the ECAN Council, the elected council?
I can't answer that question. I'm sorry. We meet in the same way with ECAN once every 2 or 3 months, I think, isn't it? That we go to the meetings.
So it looks as
it's
if
not very
could,
frequent anyway,
so
and I'm not sure whether they. I'm not sure whether they see our minutes or not. Sorry.
Okay, and then a more specific question on the report itself. The paragraph just before the picture in the report that relates to Sam Hampton's presentation on the Perch Springs. There were 2 recommendations, the first of which was that these findings be considered in decisions about the future management of drinking water supplies, particularly in O'Kane's Bay, and the second of which relates to providing Sam Hampton with an opportunity to evaluate the results of the deep bore injection trials for the Akaroa wastewater disposal. Have you had, as chair of the committee, any response back from the City Council as to how those 2 recommendations have landed or how they're going to be dealt with?
No, the only communication we've had has been from you.
So again, it worries me that there are recommendations that have come from the committee which need to be picked up somewhere.
I don't know where they go.
As part of a process,
yeah.
and I'm not sure where that, the formal process for dealing with those recommendations, but there are 2 things here that need to be picked up because they're both important, and I would hate to see those recommendations just disappear and not be picked up in any meaningful way, particularly when there are community members that may well have become aware, not least through this report, of the second of those recommendations, and therefore have a reasonable expectation that a well-trusted person in the form of Sam Hampton will have some evaluation input into the results of the deep well injection, which is going to be a matter of huge public opinion anyway.
So could I just make a comment that we did have a briefing from Mike Burke at our Community Board meeting at a seminar last Monday, and Mike did say in the conversation that Sam Hampton had actually been up at the drilling site when they were removing a core sample. So Sam has obviously already got a working relationship with the city at the moment.
The point that Councillor Turner's making, though, I think he's responding to the actual report from the Banks Peninsula Zone Committee, which is to request that there's a specific role for him in terms of his independence and status at the university. Is that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just providing
There's
advice.
a role that the committee wants him to play in terms of the results of the deep well injection trial. The Zone Committee, quite rightly, in response to a detailed and really interesting presentation, have made a recommendation. But as a member of the Zone Committee and as a member of this council, I need to be confident that that will be picked up in some formal way.
So, perhaps the easiest way would be to simply, in receiving these reports, note the request of the Banks Peninsula Zone Committee for, what's the wording here? Requesting CCC consider providing Sam Hampton with an opportunity to evaluate the results of the deep bore injection trials for the Akaroa wastewater disposal and refer the matter to staff.
Perfect.
So, I mean, that way we're noting that that's your recommendation and we're referring it to the management of the organisation.
Thank you, but that doesn't really overcome the difficulty that Councillor Turner has identified, in that we make recommendations which go nowhere.
No, I know, but I'm trying to
and you're picking
find,
up here,
I'm
which
trying
is good,
to find a solution to a particular problem that has been raised on this occasion. It doesn't solve the problem.
Yes.
Yes. Yes, I'm very, very aware of this now. I wish it had been in your report, and then I could have taken some advice on what we might have been able to do.
Don't have any influence over that report.
Really?
Oh, my verbal, that's the only way I get my 2 cents.
But the section that says Banks Peninsula Water Management Committee, the committees themselves don't have any input into.
I don't see them before they come to you, no.
Okay, all right. Well, that might be another element that we'll look at as well. So thank you for your free and frank disclosures in front of the
Thank you for providing me with a very public forum for my free and frank.
Well, you wouldn't have got this far without
thank you.
without coming to the council. So, all right. So if I could just now hand over to the person who isn't Alan Lund.
Tēnā koutou katoa. So I'm have been Te Wahora Zone Facilitator, so I work for Environment Canterbury, and apologies on behalf of Alan Lynn, who has been involved in the preparation of this material. I just want to focus on one aspect that Alan wanted to share and I guess celebrate with you, which was the joint workshop of the Zone Committee with the Te Waihura co-governors at Ngāti Moki Marae at Taumutu, which is pretty significant. For those, and I hope shouldn't be any on the council, but the Te Waihura co-governors are representatives of Ngāi Tahu, this council, Environment Canterbury councillors and Selwyn District Council. The significance is that, I guess, to get a healthy lake, there's a couple of things need to be done. Serious improvements in the catchment itself, and also some intervention, some action in the lake itself. It's always been very, very clear to the Zone Committee and indeed to others that anything in the lake needs to be led by Ngāi Tahu, and I guess that leadership is through the Te Waihura co-governors. So it's very, very significant because the Zone Committee has focused its actions on trying to get the game lifted in terms of particularly farming in the catchment. So it's very significant to have the Te Waihura co-governors and the Zone Committee having a delightfully full and frank communication and conversation actually on the marae on the shore of Te Waihura. The only other thing that I want to touch on is to, I guess, remind the councillors that the so-called refresh of the Zone Committee community members will start from next week. So community members on the Zone Committee serve 3-year terms. So at the end of this year there will be different numbers of community members' terms across all of the 10 Zone Committees that effectively come up for, they're finished, and so there's a process for seeking expressions of interest from anyone who has an interest in water in particular zones to apply, and then there's a process, a selection process that certainly a number of councillors have been involved in the past. So the refresh process, I guess, is launched the start of next week, and I guess expression of interest, I think the final date for those is in mid-October. So I would encourage all of the councillors, if they can think of people who would be interested in joining Zone Committees, encourage them to apply, because the strength of Zone Committees is in the community members, and it's important to get a lot of people applying so that you ultimately have, as part of the selection working group, and the councillors are, to actually get a good choice. I always, as one of the people that help facilitate those, I celebrate when those selection working groups have a really difficult job. Kia ora.
Very good. Are there any questions? All right, so I've got, no, I haven't got a mover and a seconder, but I'm just wondering whether we want to add another resolution. I was just busy trying to word it, but something along the lines of request staff to meet with the zone committee representatives and develop a mechanism for ensuring that it's kind of like we take input from the community boards when we're doing the LTP and the annual plans. So it's kind of like ensuring that appropriate engagement or appropriate but it's information requests, but it's also they want to input into decisions around the plans that we make in terms of allocation of funding for particular things, you know. So for ensuring appropriate input into the relevant council decision-making processes. So it's just to just try and, I mean, I'm not trying to write the solution. I'm just trying to write the wording for getting it. Anyway, if we ask them to meet with zone committee representatives to develop a mechanism for ensuring appropriate input into relevant council decision-making processes and report back what in
October or something?
Yeah, it'll be the, when are you due to come back? December. Oh no, we'd want to do that. Report back by the end of
the year.
Well, report back by the end of November, so that way we could actually have a paper that ties in with their meeting.
Would that be the zone committee facilitators, perhaps, rather than the representatives?
I don't know. Well, I was just trying to think of a
staff to staff thing, isn't it? Really?
That's the point. We are a committee of you.
Yeah.
We are your committee. This is a governance role that we are in. And it's not a staff to staff thing.
Yeah. And
we're becoming really frustrated because we have no ability to influence staff.
I'm hearing you. I'm definitely hearing you. So if we leave it at the representatives, then that can be the councillor representatives and the chairs. So, and I don't think we need to just say more than that. We'd just leave it to the proper conversations having. And I'm just also want to kind of almost direct ourselves to discuss this at the Water Forum next week as well.
We have got a bit of a gap. We don't hear anything from the regional committee, so I'm wondering if we want to do something about that. Do they want to report through here as well, or?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah, that's right. Yep, happy to. Yep.
Yeah, well, Sarah's our representative on the regional one, but you know, it's who chairs the regional one?
Who's the new chair?
Hugh Logan.
That's right. The new chair. So.
Right. Okay.
So can I just ask, does the regional committee get all the minutes from all the other committees?
Each committee has a representative on the regional committee, but they kind of deal with Canterbury issues rather than, is that right? Rather than specific individual zone matters. In fact, they do stuff that a lot of the time we're not very interested in, with no disrespect.
Yeah, no, that's fine. We get a report back from each of the zones at the regional the committee meetings. Yeah. And all the meetings are public and the minutes and everything are all, yeah, online and available. Just like the PT committee and the land transport, yeah, they're all, yeah.
Yep. Look, I don't want to kind of hold this up, but I mean, we can easily put this on the agenda for the water forum next week. We don't need a resolution to do that. Andrew?
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. I think today's presentations and the discussion that's resulted from them has highlighted that there are some unusualities, for want of a better expression, in terms of the way that the zone committees relate to council. The idea that we've got governance bodies which are a governance body of council, or a joint governance body of council that have got no realistic way of reporting into council and reporting their resolutions into council in any formal sense, does seem very unusual. You know, we wouldn't have community boards that passed recommendations that then didn't report those in any meaningful way to council so that we as governors could make a decision on them. It appears that the recommendations coming out of the zone committees are dealt with by staff rather than us as governors. If the mechanism is that we need to pick up those recommendations by way of passing resolutions at meetings like this, so be it. But I don't think that was what was intended. I think we've actually, through a number of conversations, uncovered that the way for dealing with these resolutions, these recommendations coming out of the zone committees is less than ideal. Also, to have committees that aren't able to submit on council policy documents, submissions, financial plans and so on, doesn't seem to be a good outcome either. At the same time, we've had a highlight from another one of the zone committees today that finding community members to serve on these committees may be problematic. Again, people will be willing to volunteer their time for meaningful roles where they can make a difference. But to have a role on a committee where there seems to be some doubt as to the actual ability of that committee to influence anything in a real sense, I think that probably leads into the recruitment problem that was discussed today as well. I'd actually like to see this whole thing discussed at the next water forum or as soon as we can, because it looks as though there are some constitutional issues around these zone committees that need to be dealt with, that may well become more relevant as we move into an environment with a fully elected environment, Canterbury, than in an atmosphere where there's been a lot more goodwill around the CWMS. Moving into a more political environment in the future, I think we need to get this tied down now before that happens. So I'd quite like to see all of the issues that have been raised today referred to the Water Forum for a good discussion between governors.
Yeah, and I've just said that we'll pop it on the agenda. So would someone like to move the motion that we have in front of us? Andrew, seconded Phil. I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you. Really appreciate your hard work on behalf of Canterbury. So, the Hornby Library Customer Services and Southwest Leisure Centre project.
Just so you know this.
Yep, so just, I mean, I'll get you to, I mean, we can take it as read, but, and I don't know whether there are any questions, but I just thought I'd alert the fact that Councillor Chen's identified just a small change to the second resolution, which simply, instead of saying agree that staff implement the process to expediently identify an alternative site, it says agree that staff implement the process as set out in paragraphs 5.7 to 5.13. So it just simply identifies in the body of the paper what the process is. It's a belts and braces approach, which I think is very sensible under the circumstances. So, are there, Jimmy, would you like to move this?
Yeah, I'd like to move.
And Anne would like to second it. Oh, yeah.
I'd like to move. One more question.
Yeah, I'll take Raf first. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my question is, are we open to looking at not having these facilities co-located? I mean, certainly from my perspective, having been involved in the hearings panel, a couple of conclusions I came to was that the library could actually go on the current site, and the budget was pretty overcooked when I looked at some of the library rebuilds that we've been done. So is that something that will be considered, or are you still going to progress with the big co-located option? No, in terms of, I guess the council resolution previously talked about the co-location, and that was the feedback we had from the community. So still progressing down that pathway. However, the outcomes and the discussion with the community board may change that, and it will come back to council as a resolution. But certainly at this stage, the resolution that was passed in August 2017 was for the co-located facility. Okay. Well, I'll be asking some questions about the budget side of things because I think it's too high.
Yeah, it's a, this particular resolution here, it's agree as to look for an alternative site in the development. Yeah, because it's yeah, I understand that, but I mean, I must say that, you know, the feedback that I've had from people that sat on the hearings panel was such that you wouldn't want to rule out looking at what the options are, you know, because it may well be that there's a way more cost-effective option which will give people the swimming pool that they really want, and may in fact be a more cost-effective option in the long run.
Yeah, if I may, through you, Chair, to say, if you look at the Bishopdale Library, I think that cost us $4 million. Jamie, is that about right? $4 million? For a, you know, a decent outcome. The budget for the Linwood pool, I think it's 20-ish. So if you compare that to this budget is, you know, pretty hefty. So I just think that should be looked at.
Yeah. I just, the thing is that it has to come back to us anyway. So it's not. No. It's not a question of cutting budgets. It's a question of what is going to produce the best result in the shortest space of time for a community that's been waiting for a very long time.
Yeah, and all we're doing here is proceeding, as we said, with the geotech analysis on Kyle Park. So once that's happening at the same time. Yeah. This is asking for us to look at an alternative site. Yes, I completely understand that. Yeah. So we're looking at an alternative site
at the same time.
Park, and then all the future stuff can come back to the council.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. But it would be wrong not to say that there's, you know, a sense that perhaps these things could be done in a different way and more quickly and more cost effectively. Yes, 2 people and a few more. Jimmy.
Okay, thank you. One question. If we review the policies 5.7 to 5.13, I'm particularly concerned is 5.10 because 5.10 is based on the all have been done through 5.7 to 5.9. But I'm question is what is the time frame for this you know, the whole information well presented to the community board in the council time frame roughly.
Yeah, so based on in the report we're getting the geotech information, the cost estimates back by late December. So we've obviously got the recess in January, so as soon as we can go back we will. So it's likely to be early to mid 2019.
Yes, that's okay. Yeah, because I'm particularly concerned if you know, geotech the investigation and also cost estimate you've done at the end of December this year, probably this time period is council recess, you know. We are no time to process to dealing with this issue. So after, you know, January, probably the appropriate time.
Yep.
I'm happy to move.
Okay, Anne.
I have a question if that's all right, Stop. Yep. Just wondering, 513, there may be a need to consult publicly again, depending on the outcome. What would be the conditions that would mean we would go back to, what would be the reasons to go back and consult with the community again?
In brief answer, in terms of the points that Raf just raised, in terms of if you were to change considerably from what we've done previously, so if there was a decision not to be able to use the consultation that we'd used last time, in terms of that would mean that we would have to go back in a different way. But that's still unknown, so hence we're flagging it that we may have to go back and do the consultation, but we'll take the advice at the time.
Right. And would there be anything, is there anything else you would do differently? Or I suppose it's probably a bit soon, but given the fact that there is some in the community who felt that their voice wasn't heard during the consultation process. Is that something that perhaps would be addressed going forward?
Yes, in terms of certainly there's some lessons learned from the previous process and how we could justify that to do a good job around, so yes.
Great, thank you.
Mike?
Is it possible to ask a question of the chair of the board?
No.
Okay, because I just had questions around similar line to Raf, because I think they should be potentially uncoupled. And also, therefore, if they were uncoupled and actually the pool, therefore, by itself would be a much smaller facility, is there potential, therefore, to look at Denton Park if actually it could fit in with this current users and all work together?
I think that this is noting the decision that it can't be co-located. It can't. We're not going to reclassify part of Denton Park, so it can't proceed.
Okay, another question then. Had it just been a pool, was it possible that the hearings panel would have actually reclassified Denton Park?
You can't ask that question of staff. I'm sorry, Mike, but you know, I understand where you're getting to, but it's not something that you can put to staff on this paper.
I understand. I'm just concerned by 2, where it says we're looking for alternative site, and that therefore we're cutting out a complete option, which potentially, I don't know what the community says, which is actually just a pool on Denton Park. That fits in?
No, it wouldn't need reclassification, but I'm sorry, it would be a complete, anyway, we will get a report back from staff as a result of this paper, and I think we should just leave it at that. Thin ice, I'd say. Yanni.
Thank you. Previously, when this has come back, I think there was reference to staff were doing their own sort of review of how we got to this point and lessons learned. And I just wondered if anyone's talking to the local community board or the local community who are involved, just to try and pick up, you know, how we can sort of avoid this long, complicated process that we've
Can we
ended up
not have this off the back of this paper? Because the project is not yet completed, and there will be a review. We're doing reviews of all capital projects after they're completed. So this will be coming back for decisions, and once the project is underway, then yes, we can start a process of looking back.
I guess I was really just interested in terms of, because I really want to see this project proceed, so I was really interested in
I think everyone around the table wants to see the project proceed. Yanni, you are not alone.
Previously with the design and the location to ensure that the next steps of this project, that doesn't get repeated.
I don't think we could waste time looking back right now. At some stage in the future, we will look back at the process and ask ourselves whether we could have done things better and learn lessons from it. That's what we should always do after big projects.
Yeah, and if it provides any comfort, certainly we'll be workshopping with the community board about the way forward.
I'm just talking about the people in the community that have been through this.
Glenn and then Mike.
Just I'm ready for what looks like a straightforward procedural motion to be put in your time there.
It's been moved by Councillor Chen. It's been seconded by Vicky Buck. And were you moving that the question be put?
No.
Oh, sorry, I thought you said procedural motion.
Well, it looks very straightforward. I'm happy to move that way.
What's the amendment?
Just for to take out the word
That was the council decision.
To alternative, so to identify a site. And seconded by Aaron. Okay, so I'll put the amendment. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. No. Put up your hands for aye. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4. That's lost. And so I will put. It's carried. So the words "an alternative" come out, and so now I'll put the full resolution. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no.
May I have a debate this one before final comments?
I should have allowed a debate prior to the putting of the amendment. Okay? Yeah. It's the motion's been carried.
Amendment reach the second, then we ask re-amendment, then we should have debate and then to.
Jimmy, it's fine because the note actually.
It's been carried. The resolution's passed. Yes, I did. I put the.
You're just about to.
Okay. All right. Jimmy,
yes.
Speak.
Okay. Thank you. The mayor and my councillors. When we review the decision of this issue at a council meeting on 2nd August of this year, particularly we focus on the paragraph 3 and the paragraph 5. We can see that both paragraphs emphasize that the council requests the staff, to undertake the geotech investigation or CAIOPA to be undertaken as quickly as possible. And also, if we review paragraph 5, we request the chief executive report back a proposal to revoke the decision of 24th of August last year and report back by the today, council's meeting on a process of possession as quickly as possible. So in here, I would like to particularly emphasize to as quickly as possible. What I mean of this as quickly as possible, which means this new facility will be the urgent need for the wider Hornby community and the residents. Second is, if we review the staff, the meeting agenda, the process of paragraph 5.7 to 5.13 of the meeting agenda, that's very logical and very reasonable. And I would like to say, actually, this is the 2nd August, we request the staff give us the feedback as a proposal. So even this process, but actually this is the proposal. So that's a fantastic, for this one. So as a councillor for Hornby, as a local councillor, I would like to working with the community board, the staff, the wider Hornby community closely to follow the process of particular paragraph 5.7 to 5.13 for progressing the assessment of the site option, as well as building up the new facility in wider Hornby area as quickly as possible. Thank you.
All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you, and thank you very much to staff for their hard work on this matter. E-scooter trading permit application. No, David. Moved by Pauline, seconded by Vicky. Are there any questions for staff? Sarah?
Thank you. I know that we've been through, sent through a very long list of questions, and some of this we've discussed already. But I think it's really good that people know the proposed subscription rates for customers, or is that still commercially sensitive?
I think it was discussed this morning. It was $1 to unlock and 30 cents per minute. There may be other pricing models that we're aware of, but that was
the one proposed at the moment.
This one's proposed at the moment.
And we're looking at potentially allowing a greater distance in the geofencing, so that it could actually get out to. I know, but just making things public. So as far as sort of Sumner and up to the gondola potentially.
So we've discussed that with Lime and they've agreed.
They've agreed. That's great. Placement and parking. There's been some concern from people in the cycling community that all the cycle parks will end up being taken up with scooters. There's sort of 700 scooters parked in Central City in the mornings, potentially, and keeping bike racks free for their intended purpose. Is that able to go in the permit provisions?
Just trying to think what we had around. There is something around safety and maintenance.
Primarily, the permit's sort of concerned with not placing them in appropriate areas where they cause obstructions. We can look at amending that to say, high demand areas to, reduce bunching. We can look at metrics and KPIs around that, so as not to take up or block public bike parking.
So we can strengthen that up.
Or alternatively, it might well be that we continue to provide the necessary infrastructure, regardless of the modality, whether it's bikes, scooters, or things like that.
Okay, and so the legal use of these wherever they are. So there's the potential for us to just say to Lime, listen, you need to make sure that whatever information you give people means that they will be using these in a legal, they're encouraging them to use them in a legal way, and they will let people know what that legal way is. Do we have any clarity over things like bike lanes and stuff as well? So can they be used in bike lanes? They will be able to be on shared paths, but bike lanes and bike paths, like major cycle routes that are separated cycle routes. The cycle ways as opposed to cycle lanes, that kind of stuff. What's the clarity around it? Because that's special vehicle lanes, which is specified for bicycles only, I think.
Yeah, so we've got in the permit provisions around informing customers about where these can and can't be used. So yes, correct. A lot of our MCRs are resolved as special vehicle lanes, which would mean technically they can't be. About a year ago, there was a change to the legislation to allow electric vehicles in special vehicle lanes. I think the intent was bus lanes. So we're still looking at that and what's appropriate and what's not. It would be some interesting information to gather through the pilot. But presently, special vehicle lanes are defined for that particular class of vehicle, which at the moment is cycles. So these are not cycles.
Okay. And when it comes to the grey areas that there are at the moment, so NZTA post on their website very, very clearly that e-scooters cannot, the word is cannot, be used on the road. But we've had advice, and Lime had advice from NZTA that it would probably be fine. Where there's this grey area, and I know that the government are doing their work on low-powered vehicles at the moment and looking at legislation, but we don't have a time frame on that. Where there is this grey area, if as a council we're endorsing this proposal and people are going with the lenient advice saying that they can be used on the road, and something happens, there's a legal argument for a driver of a car who hits a scooter or those kind of things to be saying, well, actually NZTA say they can't be used on the road. So
that would be analogous to the argument that the council provides roads as well, and there are car accidents on road. So
except that we have legal clarity that cars are allowed on the road.
I think it's a
so
stretch.
That's different.
I think it's a stretch, and it'll be unfortunate to suggest that there is a legal argument that the council, in issuing a trading permit that very clearly states that the operator of the trading permit is required to ensure the legal use of these vehicles, and then likewise the operator of the vehicle, accepting the terms and conditions, is required to operate the vehicle in a legal way. Those two provisions are there explicitly to make clear that this isn't indemnified environment where any wrongdoing can come back to council. That would be reckless on our behalf.
Yeah, no, I'm not talking about liability in that kind of way, one of the things I'm talking about is what happens if it's decided that actually, we do this, we say they've got to be used legally, NZTA finally come back and say, actually, we've got to be really careful on this one. The odd one here or there hasn't been a problem, but actually 700 on the streets of Auckland or Christchurch, we need to be really clear on this. We're saying no. Then we've got 700 on the footpath instead of spread between footpath and road, and at quite high speeds. And that might change a decision we could make. But if we don't have that legal clarity beforehand, it's hard to make that call.
So we've asked for that beforehand.
Yeah, and NZTA have told you that they're fine on the road, but their website still says that they're not.
So we've asked that of the operator, and the operator needs to provide us with clear evidence from NZTA that they're happy for this.
Yep, I think that's asked and answered. Can I just draw your attention to the change to 1 and 2, but it does allow for some specific things to be called out if councillors do want to. So instead of approving staff to issue a 3-month trading permit, staff have a delegation to do that. So it's not something that has to come before the council. But they're asking us, because this is new technology and it's new for New Zealand, new for Christchurch, they would like us to give an approval to the concept, in this case presented by Lime Technology, to operate a shared electric scooter scheme on a trial basis, and ask staff to consider the permit application made by Lime Technology Limited. It notes that if the permit is approved, terms and conditions can be imposed in accordance with the staff delegation under the Public Places Bylaw, and ask staff to take into account the following in respect of imposing any terms and conditions. Well, I mean, it seems to me that there's a general agreement that we'd like to see that the scooters are utilised, and the people who use them are told that they have to utilise them in accordance with the NZTA requirements. So I don't know if you want to come up with some wording that better defines that.
That would have required me, sorry, to been paying full attention to.
Look, most people fall asleep when I'm talking. You can just join the club.
But unfortunately, I distracted my colleagues who are probably equally going to not be helpful on that one. We did also just note that it would be helpful to still have
the operator advises the provides the operator provides
advice to the user
from NZTA as to
reality.
Yes.
Yeah.
What is it? Where they used?
Where they can be legally used.
Yeah.
And can we put another clause in there
Legally
as well?
approved under standards and definitions set out by NZTA.
Sorry?
Legally, the e-scooters are legal and approved under standards or definitions set out by NZTA.
Can you just find that wording in the actual document itself and copy it? Yeah. All right.
And could we have another one that, like a B, that has something to do with satisfactory reports from the referees? So I know that there's been some concern overseas about some of the operation, and I know that we haven't contacted the referee cities yet, and I'd quite like to make sure that that's done before we sign off on this.
So
yeah,
but
we'll be undertaking referee checks, obviously, subject to the concept being approved by council, so we're happy either way, but we'll be undertaking those referee checks and wouldn't express the delegation until we're satisfied on those. So you might want to be there as Sarah says that notes that staff will undertake referee checks prior to executing the delegation or executing the.
Yeah. So it's just a 3 notes. Staff will undertake referee checks, and Yep, sorry, Pauline was next, yeah.
A question about the scooters. I mean, I think this is a really good idea to have a pilot of this in Christchurch. But is there any way their top speed could be slowed down? I know sometimes on electric bikes you can slow them down. Why do they have to be 27k? That's my only concern.
So people have raised this, and the point that has been made to me is actually the top speed of your car is 180, 200 kilometres an hour. That doesn't ever mean that you can go that fast. So the same rules apply in terms of safety and any limits as anything else.
But if the top speed was, 15, that would give me a little bit more comfort. Have you asked them if they're able to adjust that in the scooter?
We haven't asked them.
You can do that on some electric bikes. You can bring the speed down so they can't actually go as fast as they would go.
Yep, you might be able to technically. We have also talked about the reported top speed will depend on weight and battery charge. So during the course of the day, it's likely to decrease. Also depending on your size and whether the scooter's been used.
If you could pass on my concern, I'd appreciate that. You might
we will.
Very good. Phil and then Yanni.
I haven't got a question. I'll like to speak to it later.
Oh, okay, right, Yanni.
I just wondered, can see these becoming quite popular. I can see the attraction in scooters versus bicycles. Just in terms of our infrastructure design, bus stops, for example, are we looking at sort of provision for, where they go in terms of just having sure that our infrastructure can actually cope? And if so, how are we doing that?
I was talking to operations staff just before this, and we're really keen to monitor the uptake and see if they are popular. We suspect that this is something we're going to see more and more of in the future, and they're sort of defined as little vehicles or the sort of mid-speed vehicle range. And I think we're really fortunate that a lot of the infrastructure we've put in over the last 5 years is supportive and accommodating of these types of vehicles. But there is work that I think we could do to have a look really closely at some of our design standards and the way we're doing things to make sure they're fit for purpose in the future.
Right. So I'm just thinking of areas where, bus stops, for example, where we're getting huge complaints from residents because of the congestion and of the buses and the narrow footpaths. The implications of these going in there, is there going to be restrictions or ways to deal with that if it becomes an issue?
I think we'd probably need to look at the specific issues like that on a case by case basis. Not being familiar with that particular issue, I'd sort of refer to operations engineers and look at solutions.
We have some of that detail in the draft permit at the moment, restricting narrow footpaths and things of that nature. So we've got some obligations on them in that regard.
Right. So take the Riccarton bus, lounge.
Please don't. No, seriously, it is now nearly 1:45, and
okay, just a final.
We'll get to debate in a minute, but so you can raise all of these issues.
Well, it's not really debate. I just want to ensure that
it's not relevant.
Well, it is. Where they're going to be stored is actually really relevant.
That's up to the operator. We've already heard from the operator. They're going to collect them every night.
Yeah.
Plug them in.
So the other question I have was just in regards to advertising. So do we have anything in the permit that restricts what can be advertised?
No.
Not currently.
Right.
They're scooters though, so they don't have the large billboards that you might have seen relative to the bike.
But they can have
with
wordings on them, they can have panels on the front. And then, there was one other thing, which was the noise issue that was raised. So obviously other places around the overseas have had some issues with it making a noise if people try and tamper with it. I think it's threatened to call the police.
An alarm.
So just in terms of the alarms, the noise, and the point that the mayor made, which I think is actually really important. And when Yike Bike came, I think they actually said that there was a setting where it actually made a sort of noise to let people know.
It's got a bell and it's got lights. Well, that's what we heard before.
Yeah, but I mean the bell's that requires people using it. So there's no ability to have a small sound generated when it's actually in use.
So hopefully people will be using them. They won't make noise either if they're not moving or and they won't move by themselves, so it will require an operator to move them. But they do have the bells, but the point that you raise about that there's no noise pollution, equally there's no emissions because they're battery powered, I think is a good one. It does therefore put the onus, as does cycling or any other form of walking fast or running down the street, on the person to actually be respectful of others. And I don't think that's a matter that we can legislate into the permit. That will be a matter though that I'm sure that people of Christchurch will be respectful in using those.
That was the issue that we've had with cyclists. I mean, cyclists don't have to have bells, and I mean, I walk around Hagley Park regularly, and it's it's very interesting when they fly by and unexpectedly. But I think e-scooters will be in a different model. So, Mike, did you have a question?
Yeah, a couple of questions. But firstly, so is it just the bottom three we're working with now, not the top three?
We would suggest retaining the original 2 and 3. So if they then became 4 and 5 in terms of the report backs.
Yeah. So 2 and 3 become 4 and 5.
Okay. And do we, like, once the pilot's done and we actually make a final decision based on the pilot, where does that decision making lie? Is that with council or staff?
We'd follow a similar process. I think the delegation would is at a staff level, but we'd certainly be wanting to keep the ISI committee and potentially when it came to a final decision, depending on the ISI committee's volition, council well informed of that decision.
Okay. And with the pilot, I assume that the permit could be revoked if there was issues.
Yes. If they're not resolved.
Okay. And just to clarify things, obviously with a push bike, you have to be on the road, you have to wear a helmet. These e-scooters, you can be on the, so you have to be on the road and wear a helmet. With these e-scooters, you can be on the footpath, and you can be on the road without a helmet, doing 27 k's an hour.
That's the current road user rule? Yep.
Yes.
Well, no, but you can. And we've obviously seen all the issues with helmets. Do we...
Well, obviously, some bike users, councillor, don't wear helmets, and that potentially exposes them. We would encourage people to wear helmets, as we understand Lime will also be encouraging users to wear helmets.
Totally understand that, but it's actually not illegal for someone to ride on the road on an e-scooter doing 27 k's an hour without a helmet on. So that's all I'm just saying. That's about it.
Sarah?
Sorry, just because, I mean, if this goes ahead, there's going to be quite a bit of time involved doing the monitoring and evaluation, which is really good, and I think it needs to be really well assessed, which is good. And so there's a lot of staff time and some costs involved in that, and yet the trial permit, or the permit for the trial, we're not charging them for it. So wouldn't we be charging them for that up front to at least cover some of our costs for doing the permit?
We're currently working through the costs of the permit. We don't have a lot of guidance around the costs for these types of permits. Agreed, there will be some staff time, and we'd look to recoup as much of that through a permit fee as possible.
But we will be doing a fee for this trial period, or for afterwards?
There'll be both. It could be a few months down the road. We'll have enough intelligence from how much monitoring goes on to accurately recoup a cost through a permanent permit, but there'll be some nominal fee for this as well.
Okay, thanks.
One option might be to the permit charge. It might be better that goes into providing necessary infrastructure and support as well. Obviously, the council has a strategic priority to encourage alternative forms of transport, including active and public transport, and this would fit well within your strategic priority.
It does, but we've already decided that we don't want to subsidise that kind of thing, right? And so putting in the infrastructure and stuff is a subsidy to the company.
No, putting in, it's a bit like suggesting that putting in cycling infrastructure is a subsidy to cycling companies. Actually, they would be for public use, and the type of infrastructure, whether it's something to lean the bikes upon or anything like that, is likely to be minimal for a stand-up scooter.
Right, okay. So the motion has been moved and seconded. So, Vicky?
In that case, I'll speak. I think this is exactly the sort of thing that Christchurch City is open to. I mean, we pride ourselves as a city of opportunity where anything is possible. This is clean, zero emission. Somebody wants to try something that looks like fun, that fits in completely with what we're doing with transport. We've done autonomous electric vehicles. We have flying cars in Canterbury. We want to look at different transport modes because we know they're coming at us, and here's somebody coming at, who's actually had to sit right through the whole council meeting, for which he should just get the permit anyway, with a new transport mode that he wants to try in Christchurch. Auckland, okay, make some mistakes, but that's all right. It will work really well in Christchurch. I think this is fun, and we should just welcome it with open arms. It's a 3-month trial. If it goes horribly wrong, it goes horribly wrong. I'm not sure what could possibly go wrong with it, but we are open to these possibilities. I think it's great that he's come to Christchurch, and I'm really looking forward to having a go on one of these things.
Sarah, then Mike.
I do love the idea of these, and like Vicky, I'm looking forward to having a go eventually. But I've got reservations. I think that having a trial is a really good idea, but I can't endorse this today, as I simply don't have legal clarity over where they can be used. I think they have great potential, but I don't want 700 and maybe 1,500 out and about in Christchurch if they're only on the footpaths and not able to be used like normal scooters or skateboards on the side of the road like yike bikes are. Remember that yike bikes needed special legislation to allow them on the road. There's also an equity issue here. Low socioeconomic areas of the city will not be as attractive as a commercial proposition, not only due to the 30 cents per minute price, that's $18 an hour, but because you need both a smartphone and a credit card to be able to use the scooters. As a shared mobility scheme, they won't be an opportunity for all. Strategically, as a city, we have not looked at whether there is space for both a commercially viable scooter scheme and a bike share scheme, and if not, which would be the best outcome for the city as a transport option for both locals and tourists. Having read some of the online commentary around the use of e-scooter providers in other cities, I also can't vote in favour in principle today if we haven't already checked with the referees that they've provided. I mean, I do love the idea of these. There's just not enough clarity for me to be able to make that decision today.
Thank you. Mike?
I think having Lime come to ask to pilot this in Christchurch is actually a really good step. Now, other cities just wake up in the morning where similar companies have actually come in overnight and just put scooters or bikes everywhere. So this is an exciting time for Christchurch, and I look forward to seeing how the pilot works. I do have some concerns. Having 700 scooters being able to be ridden on the footpaths or on the road without a helmet, it does raise a lot of safety issues. And when it comes to the electric scooters, the road user rules, the Land Transport Act, and information on the New Zealand Transport Agency's website, it leads you down different paths with different outcomes. Some say it's road only, some say footpath only, road and footpath, registration, driver's licence. It is a very, very grey area. And perhaps, I guess, the arrival of so many scooters in both Christchurch and Auckland may actually get this grey area sorted out a bit sooner rather than later, but hopefully, it won't be too late for some people when they're actually going to be going at high speeds in actually a vulnerable environment. One of the things that does concern me, we see e-scooters as a PT option, I guess allowing people to make that last mile of their journey. And as a council, I think we need to decide how important PT is to us and the city. While we're quick to let ECAN know that public transport should be seen as a social service that is affordable to us, we're about to see Christchurch's last PT mile option become an unaffordable option to many of our residents. Investing in quality PT is extremely important, and perhaps it's time for the council to step up and provide its own PT bike share that actually puts people first before profits.
Phil and Aaron, Tim, Yanni. We'll be here all day.
I've listened carefully about the safety issues around it, and to me, overall, this is going to be sufficiently safe, and the safeguards here, in terms of if it doesn't work, that in fact any breach will be terminated. And Cameron has assured us today that he's going to work with council, and council staff clearly are working with him to make sure this does work. So I think it's important that we don't throw in a whole lot of red tape and stop this. There's no question at all. With the new technology, in fact, these electric scooters are coming whether we're ready or not. And I think it's great. We are working with the Lime so that in fact we get something that will be, as Vicky was indicating, really good for our city. And I think in effect it should be part of the PT options, and we need to look at ways that we can utilise it that way. So I'm certainly strongly in support that we undertake. It's more than a trial. It's a whole pilot for us.
Thank you, Anne.
Thank you. I'm totally in support of this. I think it's a fantastic opportunity. It supports for a 3-month trial. It's only 3 months, and we will learn things from it. But we're going to give it a go. It supports our strategic priorities of increasing active transport and also to achieve a vibrant and exciting inner city. So it'll bring young people out and about. We're concerned about obesity, we're concerned about screens. It'll bring more people onto the streets, which has the wonderful effect of having more people on the streets, which means that people feel safer, they feel that they're part of a community. And it's working in the US, which is probably the most libelous country in the world, so if it works there, it's got to be fine here. So let's be a council. Let's be a council that's open to new ideas, new people, and new ways of doing things. Let's go for it.
Yeah. Trump that one, Aaron.
I'll see if I can make the council great again. This is a little yin-yang for me. I went and did a bit of research last week and had a look at these in action, and I did note that Santa Monica have banned them, and yet in Venice they're flourishing. So right next door to each other, you've got the two universes going on. I don't mind my city looking a wee bit messy and being a little bit chaotic and posters on lampposts and people riding bikes everywhere. That's the kind of city I'd like to live in, but that's not the city everyone wants to live in. So we should expect some feedback around people dumping these in the wrong place. I hope they're water soluble, because the odd one will get jumped into the river and things. But in a 3-month period, we will get to see how the Christchurch behaviour with these goes. The worst case scenario is someone would die because you can ride them on the road with no helmet and they do 27k an hour, and if you have a mishap with a bus or a truck or another vehicle, that could be the worst case scenario. It doesn't mean it will be, because when you Google accidents on scooters, they're not that bad. It's usually a few grazes and things. The funniest part to watch is when people hop on them and their minutes have run out and it starts to die, and then they try and scoot and it just starts locking up on them. That's really, really funny to watch. But they are literally, if you go down Venice Boulevard now, there's 6 in every block. They are everywhere, and they're incredibly popular, as in populous. There's lots of them. There's quite a lot of people on them. They're not in other parts of LA. There was none in Hollywood. There's none in downtown. There was none in Anaheim. They were all in the beach districts. So they were suited to a particular area. And so it'll be an interesting trial to see. I'm not saying it's going to work, I'm not saying it's not going to work, but it'll be very interesting to see if it does work in Christchurch. But I don't mind the chaos.
Tim.
Thank you. I think this is great. I think it's exciting. I think to say that look, it's going to limit those that can't afford it, so therefore we shouldn't do it, is short-sighted. We've got public transport. This won't stop us looking at our public transport and trying to improve it. But I think it would be wonderful if more and more people picked this up, so they left their cars outside the central mile and came in on scooters. I think it's outstanding. With regards to the danger, this morning I saw a pedestrian hit by a car on Cashel Mall, Colombo Street intersection, which was generally pedestrian. I saw a cyclist hit at the roundabout of Dyers Pass Road and Centauros Roads earlier this week. So, there are things that happen on our roads which are up to those that are on it to behave and be respectful. So we can't control that. But to say, oh look, all these things, let's put these barriers up, because these people can come anyway. So I think it's great that our staff are going to be working with these guys and try and get it, those teething problems which are going to happen, there's no question about that, to just try and manage those so we get a really good outcome for another option of public transport or commercial transport, but electric, and taking those problems out and taking the question of the environment and bringing that for the forefront. I think it's really important. To have them humming away would be kind of detrimental to having electric, silent and quiet. As you have 700 scooters running around the central city humming to warn people they're coming. So your next thing, you have cyclists whistling. It'd be lovely, wouldn't it? So I'd suggest that the bells will just be used by those users as they should be on bikes, etc. I'm really looking forward to the challenge that we have with this over the next 3 months. Thank you.
Tim, sorry, you're Yanni.
Yeah, it's really interesting looking at where we're going as a city, and I guess where the world is going. In 1997, Council put an amendment to its Christchurch City Public Places and Signs bylaw that no person shall play at any game or ride in or upon any toboggan, cart, trolley, skateboard, roller skate or similar device in any road or public place in such a manner at such time that may cause damage to property owned by council or may cause annoyance, danger or inconvenience to residents or members of the public in the vicinity. And then went on to say that from time to time by resolution it could actually prohibit the use of skateboards, but not all those other devices in certain areas. And I think for someone who was around back then, it's actually really interesting to see where we're progressing now in terms of skating and scooters. And at the end of the day, Christchurch is a flat city. This is one of the best places in the world to skate, scooter or cycle. And so I think it's really exciting that we're getting this new technology coming in. I can see these being incredibly popular, and I think it does raise the question in terms of our urban design and infrastructure design standards. How are we catering for this? Because the concerns that have been raised are valid in terms of safety, in terms of the mixture of vehicles and things that are vehicle-like, but obviously don't afford the same level of protection for the riders. So, I just think this is great that we're trialling it here. I welcome this coming to our city. I think the issues in terms of where they're stored, how they're located, and how they're used is really important. And hopefully we can deal with that because we're doing the trial. But I think people will be really excited about this. I think this is definitely the way of the future. And I think, this is something that we should embrace.
Yep. So, well, I absolutely love it, and I think it's a fantastic idea. Actually, some of the reasons why people are concerned are actually the reasons I'm so looking forward to it, and that's because you don't have to wear a helmet. All of the evidence shows that wearing a helmet puts you at far greater risk than not wearing a helmet. And that's because people assume that if you're wearing a helmet that you're safer than you are. And, it's just, it does seem to me that this is, I don't feel the same way about children. I think children should wear a helmet. But I think that this is for 18-year-olds and over, and it's crystal clear, and let grown-ups be grown-ups. Let people take some risks, but also have some fun. I agree that the highest speed that it can travel at is not the speed it will normally go at. I know that there are cyclists who cycle at faster than 30 k's an hour in the 30k area that we have for other vehicles. And I mean, you've seen it, and I've seen it right throughout the throughout the parks and places like this. So I just think it will take off. I think it will do really, really well, and I'm really looking forward to welcoming Lime technology officially to the city. David.
Yeah, thank you. Look, I give my general support to this proposal as well, and having spent a few weeks in Europe recently, I was almost cleaned up by a killer bike in Amsterdam. they call them the killer bikes there. And I do agree with this philosophy of helmets. You know, in all the European cities, no one wears helmets, and there are very few instances of any serious injury on the continent. And look, there are literally hundreds of thousands of bikes. I've got photos of a bike rack outside the Amsterdam railway station, and it would literally be probably 3 times the length and width of this room, chocker with bikes. I didn't see a lot of electric scooters on the continent, but they were about in some areas and are starting to take off. So I think we've got to move with technology, but I certainly think the helmet issue is one that's going to need some resolution, because I don't think scooters will be required to wear helmets, and they're probably more at risk than bikes, potentially. So, yeah, some interesting observations, but yeah, I'll support this.
Very good. So, Pauline, would you like to wrap it up?
Oh, look, everything's been said really, and I think it's going to add a lot of vibrancy to Christchurch. But if you look at the geographical area that these things are going to cover, from South Shore to the airport, Hornby, the bottom of the hills, that's a massive area, and I know they'll be in hubs within that area. But I don't think the numbers of them are going to be as problematic as we think. And the other thing we haven't touched on is I think they'll be really good for tourism here. Like at $18 an hour, tourists might take them for an hour or two. But for our users, they'll probably use them for their end of commute, particularly to help fill that West End gap. Will be really handy, I think, in Christchurch from the bus exchange. So, and I think the safety features and the controls will be in the permit, just to ensure that the safety and well-being of the users and the wider public will be taken care of. I have faith that it'll be addressed. So, yep, I'm really supportive of this trial and look forward to seeing how it goes, and also having a go.
One of the councillors just highlighted that the words 3 months have disappeared from the trial thing. So you just throw in 3 months, and that way it's going to come back through council anyway. I know it was a good try. I personally would approve a longer trial, and I wonder whether
It's just to the 3 months.
well, yeah, well, I mean, we can't change the resolution. I mean, I could leave it out, and because it wasn't in there when we were debating it, and no one pointed it out to me until I just read an email, which I shouldn't have done. I personally would be more than happy to. Well, anyway, look, it's 3 months, and in that time, people can come back for a further, report back. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Two abstentions. Okay. Templeton and Davidson. All right. So that is carried. Welcome. Good news. All right. And I think that brings us to the conclusion of the meeting. Yes. So I declare the meeting closed.